oh boy. I was really excited about this one. I really wanted to like it. I love Arcane Season 1, and I had a lot of hope for Season 2. But I'll be honest right up front, this isn't the show we were looking for. The first season of Arcane is perhaps the best original show on Netflix, an example of video game adaptations done right. Arcane is based on a massive multiplayer battle arena game called League of Legends. Legends has a professional circuit with international tournaments and cash prizes nearing $500,000 for the first place winners. But the gameplay and tournaments aren't what most people find interesting about League of Legends. It's the world that the game takes place in, filled with rich lore, characters, and story, some of which have been showcased in a series of beautiful cinematic trailers. The studio behind many of those trailers is the French animation house Fortiche. Back in 2021, Riot Games and Fortiche partnered for a larger, far more ambitious project, a 9-episode TV series set in the world of League of Legends. Arcane did an extraordinary job of setting a story in the world of the video game, showing off some compelling character-driven narratives, strong dialogue with great voice performances, and some impressive animation. Not long after the first season was released, news came that Arcane would get a Season 2, and it's taken 3 years to finally release. And release it has, and we're going to dive in to determine if Season 2 can live up to the first season. Spoiler alert, it doesn't. After a stylized music video style recap of Season 1, the first episode picks up right where Season 1 ended, with the aftermath of Jinx's attack on Piltover's council chamber. First of all, Jace and Mel are alive. More than alive, they seem to have survived without so much as a scratch, though not everyone got off as easy. Robo-Guy Bolbach, Puzzle Guy Hoskell, and Caitlyn's mother Cassandra are all dead. The last two counselors, the Clockwork Necklace Lady, Shula, and the effeminate guy, Sallow, are injured but alive. Though of the survivors, the worst off is Victor. Jace rushes to find help for his friend who is near death. The only thing he finds is the Hex Core, which seems to merge with Victor. What it's doing for him or to him isn't immediately evident. And I'm going to pause here for a moment because this opening scene is delivered in a very strange way. We don't see the explosion of Jinx's rocket. We don't see what happened in the council chamber. We only see the aftermath. So at the moment, Jace and Mel getting out of this with barely a scratch feels like a massive case of plot armor. However, because of the way this is presented, I have hope that they will revisit this moment later and give us a better idea of what's happened, to add some detail or information that will explain how this played out. But we'll have to wait, because we jump into another stylized music video showing the funeral of Cassandra Kiriman, as well as how Caitlyn is dealing with a loss. While this sequence is beautifully rendered, it also feels like they are using it to speed through some character development that could have been handled better by giving it some more time. But as the montage ends, we see Caitlyn, with Mel and the surviving members of the council, standing in the ruins of the council chamber. The assembled are meeting to discuss how to respond to the attack. There are disagreements and wrangling, as some, like Sallow, want all-out war with the Undercity, while others insist that the attack was a single rogue individual.
She confirmed this was the act of a single deranged individual. Jinx.
Though due to the influence of Ambessa, the council sanctions sending an army of enforcers into Zaun, but without Hextech weapons. The strangest thing here is that Jace is noticeably absent. He isn't there because he hasn't left Victor's side, which makes a kind of sense. What doesn't make sense is that no one brings up his absence, questions why he's not there, or holds off on a vote of this magnitude while there's a council member absent.
Then it's settled. 2-1. We invade.
After this, we finally get a scene with Caitlyn and her father. They exchange a heartfelt moment in their shared grief, and the dad passes Caitlyn something from her mother, the Kiriman family key. And after the 10-minute mark, we finally get our first Vi-Caitlyn scene. Honestly, I'm not sure whether to praise them for their restraint or chide them from dragging it out. The burgeoning relationship between these two characters was a big piece of Season 1. It impacted both characters' assumptions and prejudices. Their connection helped each of them grow, as personal affection trumped the dehumanizing propaganda that each side held. So because of that, keeping them separated through these story beats feels a little off. After a moment of comfort, Caitlyn tells Vi of the Council's plan to invade Zaun.
They're sending all the enforcers after Jinx.
And right on the heels of that, she offers her a badge and a position with the enforcers. Vi doesn't take too kindly to that and harshly rejects it.
Kate, I can't wear this.
I watched them kill my parents.
The scene is painfully melodramatic. Caitlyn thinks this will help Vi prove she's a good Zaunite, while Vi still views the enforcers as the bad guys. They talk past each other instead of to each other, and both sides slip back into the kind of "I thought you were different" type of mentality. This scene ends with Vi leaving in a huff. I understand what they were trying to do with this, but I don't think it was executed well, and I don't like that they are so quickly trying to push a conflict that will drive a wedge between Caitlyn and Vi 12 minutes into the first episode. Next, Mel visits Jace, who is still keeping watch over Victor, who is now encased in some sort of hex core womb. Jace is struggling with a bit of survivor's guilt, as he tries to figure out how the explosions seem to spare some of them and not others. And hopefully this is another breadcrumb that will lead to later answers. They talk about what went down with the council, although there's still no mention about why Jace wasn't there. And then Mel tells Jace that Caitlin is hurting over the loss of her mother. So Jace goes to see her. We see that Caitlin is having visions of her mother and Jinx, which foretells her deteriorating mental state. But mainly the main point of this scene is to show that Jace is wavering about whether or not to make Hextech weapons. Caitlin is against it, but both are still unsure of what the best course of action is. We catch back up with Vi, who's been drinking with an enforcer in the streets of Piltover. They are approached by a couple of on-duty officers. One of the enforcers is named Maddie, who fangirls over Vi for a moment as she tells her how hard Caitlin fought to get her enlisted. Apparently, Vi has become an inspirational figure among the enforcers for the way she stood up against Silco. A little drunk and taken aback by Maddie's accolades, Vi doesn't have the heart to tell the girl that she said no to becoming an enforcer. But the conversation is interrupted by bells ringing out from the square, calling the citizens of the city to a public memorial for those killed by Jinx's attack. Vi follows the officers and others to the memorial, and as the scene progresses, you may start to get some Red Waiting vibes, especially when a guy in an enforcer uniform closes everyone in by shutting the doors. Sure enough, one of the guards is not a guard, and one of the mourners is not a mourner, but a Zonite who stages another attack. The fake guard fires off a signal flare, which signals the drop for more Shimmer attack drones. And there's a woman whose name I don't remember, though she's the mother of the kid Jace killed when they raided one of Silco's Shimmer factories in Season 1. So this woman is out for revenge, focusing all her efforts on killing Jace. And although they do get injured, none of our core cast is killed before Mama Medarda arrives with some of her Noxian soldiers. They quickly put down the attack drones, and Chainsaw Lady is killed by Ambessa. And I want to like this sequence, but there's something a bit off about it. The Shimmer drones make short work of a half a dozen officers in a matter of seconds, but are unable to deal a killing blow to any of our main cast despite having plenty of opportunities. For instance, Maddie, the enforcer we just met, is grabbed and hung upside down by a Goliath drone, but he doesn't seriously injure or kill her. Vi runs off to find and bring back Jace's hammer, which gives us a cool hero shot, but it doesn't match up with the Vi we know. Vi of the first season would be more likely to jump in fist first, instead of running off on a Hail Mary attempt while others fight and die, especially when Caitlin is in harm's way. So like other parts of this episode so far, our characters aren't acting in line with their established personalities. It's awkward, forced, and clumsy. In the aftermath, Vi and Caitlin have another contentious talk, and we see that Caitlin is being pushed further into a place where she sees all of Zon as the problem.
What kind of animals?
Now, I understand that the writers want us to believe that she's being radicalized into the pro-war side, but they are rushing it in a way that undermines her character growth in the first season. Then Caitlin breaks down again over her mother's death, and Vi tries to comfort her, and this feels strangely out of place given what we've just seen and the conversation we just had. This exchange would have worked far better in the previous scene between them, so even from a technical perspective, this episode is frustratingly put together. Caitlin uses the key thing her dad gave her, which unlocks a computer terminal with the Kierman family records. We don't get to see exactly what Caitlin does, but whatever it is, catalyzes her resolve. In the next scene, she barges into the council chamber and announces her plan to take a small strike team of enforcers into Zon to shut down any remnants of Silco's operation and to capture Jinx. This is another strange scene. Sallow starts to object to the intrusion of the council meeting, but Caitlin shuts him down.
I am a decorated officer, leader of House Kiraman. Address me with respect, or keep your mouth shut.
Wow, she's such a badass. Only this isn't even remotely true. Let's go back to the first season for a second. Caitlin is an enforcer, but her career is locked to her status as being a counselor's daughter, and she knows it. Her desire to buck against those restraints causes her to become insubordinate, often butting heads with leadership, and doing things that she's not supposed to do.
I realize you're used to getting your way, Kierman, but we have a chain of command for a reason.
Then in episode 4 of season 1, Caitlin is almost blown up in one of Jinx's attacks, which leads to this scene.
You almost died, Kate. I just want you to be safe.
Thanks, but I already have a job.
No, you don't. After the attack, your parents spoke to the sheriff.
So according to this, Caitlin isn't an enforcer anymore. At the very least, she's been taken off active duty and has lost her position. Then Caitlin goes rogue and embarks on a mission of her own. She BS's her way through getting Vi released out of prison so she can take her to the Undercity. After their escapades, they emerge back into Piltover. Caitlin's mother gets them an audience with the council, which leads to a falling out between Vi and Caitlin.
Oil and water. Wasn't meant to be.
And after a gratuitous shower scene, Caitlin is abducted by Jinx. This development leads us into the climax of season 1. Now, with that context, we can return to this scene in our current episode and see why Caitlin's statement is nonsense. Even though they've been playing her off as an officer, she shouldn't be. For all we know, Caitlin hasn't been reinstated, and she certainly hasn't received a commendation.
You understand you've broken several laws.
We don't even know if a new marshal has been appointed after Marcus was killed in episode 7. But never mind all that. The writers clearly don't care about their own established story, and they don't want us to care either. Instead, they want to give us a Caitlin is a girl boss moment. Oh, and the problems with the scene don't end there. We see that Vi has changed her mind and has chosen to join the Enforcers. We don't get to see her make that decision, to see her wrestle with it. We don't know what finally convinced her or anything that would make this scene pay off. There is a way they could have gotten Vi to this moment, but it would have taken time and narrative work to make it believable. As it is, this is just an outright contradiction of her character.
Kate, I can't wear this.
And she's not the only one. Jace has changed his mind and has made a set of Hex-Tech weapons for this mission, including a new rifle for Caitlin and gauntlets for Vi, contradicting himself in this very episode.
Mel, I promised Victor. Never again. Never again. Never again.
Again, there was a way they could have gotten Jace to this, or perhaps they could have introduced a new character, another Hex-Tech expert who defied Jace and made weapons behind his back. Just about anything would have been better than skipping all of that story and character work for the sake of expediency. As the first episode ends, we see Singed tracking a two-headed wolf through a snowy landscape, and that is episode 1. Arcane has really hit the ground running this season, pushing into the ever-evolving conflict between Piltover and Zahn. I like that they aren't wasting time, but I do think they're moving too quickly. I was hoping they might take a little more time in the wake of Jinx's attack, to catch up with our different characters and groups, before committing to more action. And I don't love the forced drama between Vi and Caitlin. If this season is going to bring them together just to break them apart again, that will get old awfully fast. But I still think there's a lot of potential here, so let's keep going into episode 2. After being absent from the first episode, we finally catch up with Jinx. Our rogue vixen narrates her thoughts while she's floating underwater. She gives us an idea of how she's dealing with the loss of Silco as she gives her surrogate father a watery burial. It's an interesting artistic choice to start off on this quiet introspective note for what is a very chaotic character. And of course there are parallels here to episode 3 of season 1, in which Silco was floating in the water. In both cases, the purpose of these scenes is to ground the characters, to remind us of their humanity and give us a point of understanding for them. After this, there is a montage showing what happened to the Undercity after Silco's death. We catch a glimpse of the other crime bosses and the eruption of conflict between them as they rush to fill the power vacuum left by Silco's death. And we learn that Jinx hasn't been a part of this at all, though she does kill a bunch of goons to save a kid who's being pursued, an act that will have repercussions later on. Next, we meet one of those crime bosses, a Yordle who has mechanical limbs and likes to snort shimmer. This guy, whose name is Smeech, with his best Joe Pesci impression, orders his men to secure one of Silco's old buildings.
You go on ahead. Report back.
But the place is overrun by poison smog, and a violent threat we don't quite see. Then we jump to a meeting of the various kingpins, including Savika, who is calling for a truce, because their internecine warfare is distracting them from opposing Piltover. And I have to point something out here. While I think the scene does a decent job of showing how the power dynamic in Zahn has shifted, there is something absent here. There's no mention of the attack on the memorial ceremony, who was behind it, or why it was launched. Like the earlier scene with Piltover's council, when Jace's absence was overlooked, there is no one who acknowledges Chainsaw Lady isn't present. This feels like another oversight on the writer's part. It would have helped to have a little context for the events in the last episode, but without that, we're left to speculate on our own. Anyway, there's a disagreement among the gangsters over what to do about Jinx, whether they should hand her over to the topside authorities or not. For her part, Savika is against it.
We don't hand over our people.
But she is in the minority. After the meeting, we see Savika is trying to fix her mechanical arm without much success. She has a nice heart-to-heart with Jinx, which is strange since they couldn't stand each other before, but they bond over how lost they are about how to move forward without Silco.
All his plans. Everything we built. The hell we supposed to do now?
Leading Jinx to suggest that since everything is broken, they simply watch it all burn. Next, Victor awakens from his hex core wound. Most of his body has now been altered, like his arm and leg. Jace is enthusiastic to have his friend back, but Victor's body isn't the only thing that's changed. Victor doesn't quite seem like himself anymore.
What am I?
He is not happy that Jace used the hex core to save him. In fact, he believes that he should be dead.
I was supposed to die.
Jace isn't sure how to react to this, and is left stunned as Victor just walks out and leaves to strike out on his own. And I'm left stunned that Jace let him. This guy has the freaking hex core infused into his body. He could be a walking time bomb, and Jace just lets him walk out.
Hold up. Wait a minute. Something ain't right.
But we just cut away from that scene, and we get a chance to see what's happening with the regular people in the Undercity. It seems many of them have fled the lanes for the Firefly hideout. Echo and his friends have been doing their best to take in refugees, but there is of course a problem. The massive tree, which is the central pillar of their community, has been infected by something. To investigate, Heimerdinger and Echo sneak into Jace's laboratory, where they're confronted by Jace himself. And I know what you're thinking. This should be an amazing moment. This is the first time that Jace and Heimerdinger have met since Jace effectively stabbed his mentor in the back and got him kicked off the council. This is the first time Heimerdinger has been back to the academy since the attack. These two must have a lot to say to each other. Heimerdinger probably has a lot of righteous indignation and anger to express. Jace is probably desperate in need of his former mentor's guidance and wisdom. Of course, not before the mother of all I told you so's. Or they could just ignore all that, have them crack a couple of jokes about sneaking into the labs, and drink tea together.
We were attempting to sneak in. Oh, pish-posh, like you've never done it.
I honestly can't believe this scene didn't acknowledge the dangling plot threads from the previous season. It didn't give these characters or the audience the opportunity for the cathartic release they desperately need. Instead, this scene plays out so casually, it's as if the major events of the past 5 episodes never even happened at all. But anyway, after a few cups of tea, Jace proceeds to look at the leaf from the tree, and says it looks similar to the corruption that happened when they exposed plants to the Hex Core.
Where did you say you found this? Deep in the underground.
Questions arise over how the corruption could have reached all the way from Jace's lab to a tree in the Undercity. Questions that are soon brushed aside by another mystery.
Where's Victor?
Well, Victor's in the Undercity, following a phantom voice that is guiding him somewhere. Elsewhere, Jinx is in the old hideout, the one she and Vi used to use to lie low from the Enforcers. We don't immediately see what she's doing, but she's got something large bundled up in some cloth. Then the place is flooded with gas. Jinx hides in time to see a group of Enforcers, including one that looks like Vi, enter and search the place. Jinx has an opportunity to shoot Vi, but can't quite bring herself to pull the trigger. Instead, she activates the target shooting game to serve as a distraction so she can get away. The tension in this scene is fairly well played, but I do have a couple of problems with it. First is how little the gas seems to affect Jinx. Certainly we can say her shimmer-enhanced body has some special resiliences, but I don't know how much that accounts for, because the gas is clearly affecting her, just not enough to make much of a difference. The other problem is how Caitlyn and Vi's Enforcers managed to make it this deep into the Undercity without incident. Just having them show up here suddenly brings up a lot of questions, which in truth distracted me and took away from the impact the scene could have had. Again, I feel like the writers are sacrificing storytelling for expediency. But Jinx does get away, only to be attacked by Smeech and his men. Hampered by the effects of the gas, Jinx is caught and restrained. But Savika shows up just in time to lend a hand, pun intended. Jinx tosses her mystery package to Savika, and it turns out to be a new mechanical arm built from parts of the machines in the old hideout. Cue another signature Arcane fight scene, which has Savika make short work of Smeech. It's a rather baffling sequence that doesn't live up to the fight scenes in Season 1, though it does have a high level of jaw-dropping animation. And I am disappointed with the conclusion. The fight scene ends with Smeech dead. It would have been nice if they hadn't tossed him aside so quickly. I mean, think about all the times we thought Savika was done for, only to have her come back. Anyway, we're back with Victor, who's still following his phantom, though he is also being followed by some Shimmer wretches. They think they might be able to rob Victor for stuff to sell for more Shimmer, but Victor seems to have pity on them. He reaches out and lays hand on one of them, Hutch. There's an explosion of magic and power, as Hutch is changed, healed from the legions that affected his body from his Shimmer addiction. The other wretches all fall to their knees and bow before Victor, as he sees a vision of his old research assistant Sky smiling at him. Victor tells the men that they don't have to be afraid anymore.
You need not suffer anymore.
Just before the credits roll, we see that Singe is still working on something nefarious, including keeping a large beating heart on his work table, as it's pumped full of some kind of green liquid. Creepy. And that is the end of episode 2. Things are moving ahead at a pretty brisk pace. A little too brisk for my taste. I'm going to reserve my full thoughts for the end of this video, so let's keep going into the final episode of Part 1. Episode 3 starts by backing up a little bit to fill us in on some information concerning things we saw in the last episode. We see Caitlyn gaining access to the Kierman family records, and this time we do get to see what she saw. Apparently it was Caitlyn's family who built the ventilation system in the underground, which helped clear out much of the industrial smog called the Grey. This means that Caitlyn now has the ability to control those systems, and what follows is another music video sequence which shows Caitlyn, Vi, and their shock troopers flooding areas of the lanes with the Grey to clear the streets and make short work of the resistance. This answers how they were able to arrive at the hideout in the last episode. So it is nice to have some additional context for all this, but I'm not a fan of the way the show is brute forcing a tone for the story exposition through these sequences. At this point, it's clear that the people making Arcane took the reaction to the Echo Jinx fight in Season 1 and decided to use it as a blueprint for approaching Season 2. But Season 1 used sequences like this to enhance the character and storytelling. It doesn't work so well when they're used as a replacement for them. These music video scenes are rendered with amazing animation, and it's clear they took a lot of time on them. But they don't replace well-paced story beats told through well-written character interactions and dialogue. They also prove you can have too much of a good thing. Anyway, the sequence ends as the Enforcers find one of Smeech's men tied upside down to a ventilation duct. As the crew moves in, eviscerated effigies drop from the ceiling, one for each member of Caitlyn's squad. Spooky. Next, the Enforcers are checking out the gangster, Hinot, while questioning him. Caitlin gets aggressive with the guy, sparking a show of concern from Vi. And again, this is just strange. Vi is usually the aggressive one, especially towards the Chem Barons and those who work for them. It seems to some degree like the writers have swapped Vi and Caitlin's personalities to facilitate what they want to do later on, and it's making things feel off. Not to mention the fact that these guys just gasp parts of the Undercity for expediency, but get concerned when Caitlin uses some mean words. But anyway, Hinot doesn't need much motivation and confesses that Jinx is up to something big.
She's planning something big right here in the pipeworks. She was headed towards the old tunnels. Something about rerouting the vents.
And I'm not sure how he knows this, unless Jinx told him and left him there so he could guide the enforcers to her, which is perfectly possible, if very convenient. Having what she needs, Caitlin places Hinot under arrest and tells the crew to gear up to go after Jinx. But Vi wants a word in private. The two go off somewhere out of earshot of the others, and Vi explains that she wants the two of them to go after Jinx alone. She's worried about the others' safety and wants to minimize the risk.
She'll smell their nerves a mile away and find a way to use them against us.
Vi says she believes her sister is gone, and Jinx is all that remains.
Everyone in my life has changed. Promise me you won't change.
What now? First of all, from what we've seen, Caitlin has already changed rather significantly from the Caitlin we knew in the first season. But leaving that aside, this line makes no sense. Powder becoming Jinx is really the only person in Vi's life that has changed in any significant way. Most of the people she was close to have died or left her, so the line should be about how she's lost everyone she's cared about, and now she's scared of losing Caitlin as well. This would not only fit better what we've seen, but would also help to develop Vi's abandonment issues, which she would have after losing her parents, her surrogate family, and her sister, so I don't understand this dialogue choice. The only reason is, of course, that we are about to see people change more than they already have. And while that works as an awkward, clumsy setup, it doesn't really connect with anything that's come before it. But anyway, this moment of vulnerability from Vi is enough to prompt Caitlin into action, and we get the one kiss scene shippers have been waiting for. Yes, Vi and Caitlin kiss, and make out. Yes, they've teased it, and yes, we knew it was coming. But like much of everything else in Season 2, it doesn't feel earned. It is forced and shoehorned in because narrative tropes dictate that if we finally have these two physically affirm their romantic interest in one another, something is about to happen to force them apart. More than tropes, the opening sequence foretells this as we see the silhouettes of Caitlin and Vi push away from each other. So we know what's on the horizon, and if the writer's lack of restraint is any indication, we will likely see it happen in this very episode. But first we see Maddie and the enforcer with no name escort Hinot back out of the ducts, leaving Vi and Caitlin to go on alone. Elsewhere we see Mbessa is meeting with Amara, a member of the Merchant Guild, who we last saw in episode 5 of Season 1. Amara was one of the people Jace met with in the Opera House as he began to make deals to gain influence. Here we find that she's asked for an audience with Mbessa, but the meeting quickly turns because Amara isn't quite herself. It seems she's being puppeteered by a malevolent force. Mbessa's enemy from Noxus has finally found her. Remember, Mbessa came to Piltover in Season 1 because a rival family had killed Mel's brother. Mbessa essentially fled to Piltover, hoping a weaponized version of Hextech could give her an advantage in this violent feud that threatened her family. Whoever this group is, it has tracked Mbessa down and is using a guild merchant to deliver a message. But Mbessa leaps into action and runs the woman through with her sword, killing Amara, but also severing the link to whoever was controlling her. Now Mbessa has two more problems. Her enemy is closing in again, and she has a murdered guild merchant in her chambers. Another jump, and we're with Counselor Sallow, who is in a pleasure house. A woman is applying some kind of ink to the designs on Sallow's legs. The ink is apparently made of shimmer, as evidenced by the color and by the shimmer that flashes through Sallow's eyes as it's being applied. But the vixen working on Sallow gets spooked when she hears someone coming, and a moment later, Mbessa barges in. The vixen is dismissed, and Mbessa has a confrontational conversation with Sallow. They fuss over the lack of progress concerning Caitlin's strike team, but Sallow mentions that success or failure doesn't mean much because the Kierman name holds so much power in Piltover.
It's not the girl, it's the name. It bewitches people.
And this statement provokes an interesting reaction from Mbessa. Interesting on a second watch through, that is. It's so subtle that I didn't catch it the first time, and I point it out here because it's one of the only hints at a major plot twist that's coming at the end of this episode. Mbessa tells Sallow to assemble every person in the house with even a little bit of influence in the city, because they have something to discuss. Next, we jump over to the Opera House, where Mel is meeting with the vixen lady who is working on Sallow. We learn that her name is Lest, and she's actually been working for Mel. But the encounter with Mbessa has shaken her up. After some pleading, Mel learns that her mother is planning some sort of coup to place Sallow as leader over the council and over the city, so in effect, Mbessa will have control over the city. Lest mentions that Mel's mother may act tough, but underneath, she's scared of something. Back with Jace, Echo, and Heimerdinger, Jace explains how his Hextech interacts with the Arcane, and the three together hypothesize that whatever's happening to Echo's tree may be a result of the Arcane pushing back.
So you're telling me that pattern is on my tree because you pissed the Arcane off with all your demands?
Before we can explore that anymore, we jump back to Mel and her assistant. The assistant confirms that Sallow is organizing a meeting with all the nobles in Piltover for something big. We also learn that Mbessa's rival has somehow seized most of the Merdarda's financial holdings, meaning Mbessa is on the run, near destitute, and desperate, which makes her extremely dangerous. Then we get a complicated sequence that cuts back and forth between Vi and Caitlin and Jace's group. So I'm going to summarize this the best I can without making the jumping back and forth too confusing. Jace and the others take a long elevator ride down to the depths beneath Piltover. Jace explains that the Hextech gates extend deep into the earth and acts as a channel which focuses the arcane energy into a beam which makes the transportation system work. Even though much of the structure exists above ground, the heart of it goes deep underground because Jace was afraid of what might happen if there was ever an overload. Echo doesn't appreciate the idea that Piltover put a potential bomb so close to his home.
So instead of it exploding in your neighborhood, it would blow up in ours.
Which also doesn't make sense when you consider Jace and Victor are the ones who built it. Doesn't sound like something they would do either. But anyway, any potential animosity this might bring up is quickly diffused, because there's something not quite right with the chamber they enter. There are more signs of the veiny corruption, and all of a sudden the three are pulled into an empty white void. Empty except for an evil-looking orb thing, which carries a similar look to the corruption that we've already seen. Intercut with this, Vi and Caitlin make their way into a large open hall deep in the bowels of the ventilation system. Where this is, or how exactly they got there, I have no idea, but it's quickly evident that this is Jinx's lair. Chalk drawings adorn the pillars on the sides of the room, telling Jinx's story. Knowing what they're about to face, Vi tells Caitlin that if she has an opening, she should take the shot.
If you see an opening, take the shot.
Now remember this because it'll be important in a few minutes. Vi moves deeper into the chamber, while Caitlin sets up her rifle. Vi calls out to Jinx, who seems surprised that they have found her.
Guess there really isn't a crack in the earth where you won't find me.
But she also seems very prepared, so I'm not sure how to square that. The sisters quip at each other about how they've changed, playing the game of who's done more wrong.
You've turned a leaf, sister.
I'm done blaming myself for your mistakes.
None of this is very well written or engaging, and it really doesn't matter. Caitlin sees Jinx and takes a shot, which is played up, except it's rather obvious that isn't really Jinx, but a reflection. But then Jinx appears on a pillar behind Vi, Caitlin tries to get a shot in, and she's jumped by Savika, so they were definitely expecting Vi and Caitlin to show up. But anyway, Vi and Jinx fight while Caitlin and Savika fight to yet another song. In the Netherrealm, Jace makes a truly baffling decision to reach out and touch the evil orb thing, which causes it to react. Suddenly, all the Hextech weapons start glitching out. Jace's hammer, Vi's gauntlets, Caitlin's rifle, and even Jake's shark rocket launcher all behave erratically. We hear Jace's inner thoughts questioning what they've done.
What have we done?
And again, for some reason that I can't explain, he tries to smash the evil orb with his hammer. More crazy glitching occurs with the Hextech stuff. Something like an electrical charge jumps from Caitlin's rifle to Savika, which incapacitates her for a moment. That allows Caitlin to get a shot off on Jinx, which blasts off the middle finger of her left hand. Vi uses this moment to get on top of Jinx and prepares to deliver a killing blow, and Jinx resigns herself to it, prepared to give her sister the win. But Vi hesitates for a moment, long enough for the kid to rush in. She grabs Jinx's pistol and points it at Vi while she covers Jinx's body with her own. The tense moment hangs before Caitlin shoots the gun out of the kid's hand. In response, the kid hugs Jinx, acting like a human shield. Vi's bloodlust has been broken, but Caitlin's has not. Our sniper tries to line up another shot on Jinx when Vi tries to stop her, worried about the kid covering Jinx. And again, we have two characters swap in how they should be acting. Remember in the first season, an innocent kid was caught in the crossfire when Jace and Vi raided one of Silco's hideouts. This accidental death broke Jace's will to fight the Undercity, but Vi was undeterred. She said a lot of kids had died because of Silco, and made the case that more death would be the cost of putting an end to it.
One dead kid? There's hundreds more where he came from, thanks to Silco and thanks to people like you who stuck their heads in the dirt.
This situation isn't that much different. At least not different enough to swing Vi into the opposite stance she had then. Much like Caitlin had been opposed to collateral damage and harming innocents, now she doesn't seem to care. Too consumed by her hate for Jinx, she's willing to gas citizens and shoot at kids. Anyway, Caitlin isn't listening to Vi, insisting that she won't let Jinx escape again.
She's not getting away again!
As if the only options were to let her go or kill her in cold blood. Again, the dialogue choices here don't work. Caitlin shoots one of Vi's gauntlets, and then takes another shot, and for just a moment they want us to believe that Caitlin has shot Vi. But Vi somehow managed to grab and deflect the barrel of the rifle. Before any of that can register, Savika has gotten back on her feet, and trips something inside a panel on the wall. There's an explosion, which releases a torrent of wind and gray. Vi and Caitlin are blown out of the chamber while Jinx and Savika and the kid are able to take cover from the tempest. The force of air and gray rushes through the ventilation system as more fans kick on, accelerating it, along with some colored dyes. The toxic mixture thunders to the surface where it explodes from vents all over Piltover, covering the city in a brightly colored smog. Underground, Vi and Caitlin are fine, but the passage back to the main chamber has collapsed, which means there's no way to get back and capture Jinx and company. Vi tries to reason with Caitlin, voicing her concern over how far she's willing to go.
I was a kid. What have you missed?
But Caitlin accuses Vi of being just like her sister.
I keep telling myself that you're different. but you're not. It's her blood in your veins.
Vi turns that around and accuses Caitlin of being the one acting like Jinx, which earns her a rifle butt to her solar plexus. Apparently, whatever affection these two had for each other is gone just like that, because Caitlin leaves Vi doubled over and in pain. And I don't have too much more to say about this. It is painfully contrived, forced, and inconsistent with who these characters should be. It's happened because it's how the writers wanted it to go down. There's no sense to any of it. So moving on, Piltover is dealing with the aftermath of the attack. Mel prepares to make the only play she can, to use the information she has to prevent her mother from taking power. But before Mel can leave her office, our Black Rose nemesis returns. Mel and her assistant get sucked into a black, thorny void and disappear. Finally, we see the big meeting, because somehow Salo managed to get a meeting with all the important leaders of the city in a matter of hours. Mbessa addresses the assembled and uses the most recent Grey attack as fodder to push for an all-out assault on Zahn. She goes on to recommend that they elect a single leader to lead the effort, one person who everyone could rally around.
Appoint a general to lead until this threat is vanquished.
Now Salo thinks that he's the leader she's talking about, and the show wants us to believe that it's Salo. So the scene turns on what the writers think is a shocking reveal.
Caitlin Kierman.
Some of the assembled are shocked, but Mbessa and her soldiers start to pound their chests to show support. The action catches on until the whole room becomes unified, and just like that, Caitlin becomes the new leader of the military and is secured as Mbessa's puppet. And this isn't all that well set up. Mbessa shared all of 2 scenes with Caitlin, and the two haven't even spoken to one another. But again, that doesn't matter, because this is obviously what the first 3 episodes have been building toward. Before we dip out, there is a little flashback in the sequence. 2 actually. We see Mbessa's right-hand man approaching Chainsaw Lady. Then we see the moment Mbessa killed Chainsaw Lady.
It's you.
So we find out the attack on the memorial was facilitated by Mbessa. She has been manipulating all of this to push the conflict so that she can achieve her desired outcome. As this episode ends, we have another vignette with Singed. Our mad scientist has hooked himself up to a couple large tanks and is circulating his blood into one of them, infusing it with something. And they're really playing this up as a mystery. And I guess it is if you haven't watched any of the trailers and have zero connection to the online sphere surrounding the show. Because if you have done either of those things, you know that Singed's project is Warwick, a mutant amalgamation of the wolf we saw earlier, and Vander, who actually isn't dead. Spoiler alert. And that is episode 3. And that is the end of Arcane Season 2 Part 1. Unfortunately, this is far, far from the excellence of Season 1. Season 1 worked as well as it did because it focused on character-driven drama, which supported and drove the narrative. Season 2 does not have this. The characters have been fundamentally altered from who they were before, changed so they can be pushed from scene to scene, saying and doing things so the next thing can happen. More than unmotivated, they have very purposely skipped or left out every single scene or moment that could have served as connective tissue. There are so many missing interactions and character beats that I can't help but wonder if the writers don't care about these characters at all. They are used for a purpose. They are plot devices, devoid of humanity. And that's what really hurts the most so far. All the wasted potential, all the possibility that has been thrown away for this. And no, it does not get better in Part 2. Episode 4, Paint the Town Blue, begins as you might expect, with another music video montage. The gist of this one is that Piltover's enforcers do indeed move into Zahn en masse. This causes riots to break out, and Jinx becomes a symbol of Zahn's resistance, especially her blue hair which the Zahnites adopt. And there's not too much to say about this. Visually, it's the least impressive music video yet, made up of mostly still pictures with almost no animation at all. The song accompanying it is likewise lackluster, with deep stirring lyrics like this. Yeah, I don't know what that has to do with a civil war either. Anyway, intercut with the imagery of civil unrest, we get a few shots of Caitlin and Mbessa, hovering nearby, reminding us of their power dynamic. And we see that Caitlin is still fixated on Jinx, who is suspiciously absent from the whole affair. The sequence ends as we see the little girl who took a liking to Jinx in Part 1. You know, the mute one who fell on top of her and then stalked her, the one who zapped Vi's will to fight and turned Vi and Caitlin against one another. Yeah, that girl. She spray paints a mural of Jinx before running off. Now, if my only issues with this opening were what I've stated already, it would amount to little more than a few nitpicks. Barely an inconvenience, and I'd be able to move right along, but the truth is the problem with this sequence is far, far worse. You see, on the other side of the opening credits, we find the show takes a time jump of several weeks, and the war between Piltover and Zahn is over. Let me say that again. The war the show spent 12 episodes building toward is over already. Piltover has subdued and now controls the Undercity. The war we thought we were going to get was a few weeks of riots and unrest. So in other words, there was no war. We didn't even get to see the bulk of the conflict. We don't know if anyone died or how many. We don't get to see how some of our pivotal characters reacted to this or what they did during this time. We get nothing. All that buildup and anticipation and it amounts to nothing. To say this is a disappointment would be a massive understatement. But that's not all. The tone of this is way off. Again, we're talking about a major conflict, people injured and imprisoned, the rise of a pseudo-fascist regime in Piltover, subjugating the citizens of the Undercity. This is the worst nightmare of our main characters from Season 1, and instead of giving it the proper narrative weight it deserves, it plays out to a bland punk rock song about bitches and squeaky toys. This is another thing that I would submit as evidence to my theory that the Arcane writers were not interested in telling the story they themselves started. So much emphasis went into building up this conflict, but it isn't what they really cared about. So instead, they swiftly bypassed it so they could move on to something else that they do care about. But it leaves the show and its characters in shambles from which they will not recover. Consider what they told us in the first few episodes of Season 2, about what would happen if the Enforcers went into Zon.
You need to find a way to call off the invasion.
What?
This battle was on your soil. Down there, you'll be on their terms.
They outnumber us 4-1.
Might matter up there, but they don't know the first thing about fighting in the Visions.
Turns out, nope, none of that was true. Piltover apparently was able to just waltz through and take it over. But it does make you wonder, where were some of our characters like Jinx and Vi while the Enforcers were taking over their home? Oh, don't worry, we'll get there. And it's far worse than you think. But first, we have a different character to assassinate. Well, more than she has been anyway. After the credits, Caitlin is sitting on her bed. Dark colors, dark lighting, and what the subtitles call melancholy music implicitly tell us that Caitlin is in a dark place. But as it turns out, she's not there alone. Caitlin is sharing a bed with Maddie, the blonde Enforcer girl who we were introduced to in Part 1.
Junior Officer Nolan. Maddie.
Yeah, Caitlin and Maddie are lovers, apparently. Okay, writers, you can't do that. You can't have a character start a physical relationship with one character, dump them in the same episode, and then show them hooking up with a different character in the very next episode. I mean, I know they're lesbians, and it might be realistic, but it isn't good storytelling. Do they still want me to like Caitlin, or are we supposed to hate her now? I can't tell, because they haven't shown us anything to explain why she's acting the way she is, to understand or empathize with her. There's no context for how this relationship came about or what purpose it serves. It's just kind of there to show us Caitlin is well and truly over Vi, and so that we can have some sexposition, hearing these two spout plot information while Maddie gropes and nuzzles Caitlin. Suffice it to say, I hate this and all it represents. Maddie comes off as a sycophant, and Caitlin appears overly cold. She's not emotionally invested in this relationship. But anyway, through the dialogue, we learn that Piltover controls the Undercity, but the occupation is wearing on, while they still continue the hunt for Jinx. Caitlin isn't sure how to proceed, and the Upper City is starting to get anxious about how many Noxian soldiers Ambessa has brought in. It almost seems as if Piltover is being occupied.
They doubled their fortification requests. Again.
But Caitlin says they need Ambessa and her men to keep the Undercity controlled, because our sniper has dug herself in a hole from which she can't climb out of, and she is still obsessed with Jinx. But where is Jinx? Where has she been? And what dastardly plot might she be cooking up? Oh, she's not. She's hiding out playing house with a little mute girl. No, I'm not kidding. They are really just playing games and pretending to be sisters.
You're lucky. I didn't get to do much of this with my older sis.
Jinx tells the girl that she reminds her of Powder, the girl she used to be. The mute girl grabs Jinx's gun and wants to take her somewhere, but Jinx tells her she isn't that person anymore. In fact, she says Jinx is dead.
Well, that's a past life, kid. Knows about as sweet as last year's milk. Jinx is dead.
What? Again, I feel like we're missing some story and character beats here to explain this radical shift. And what does it even mean? If she's not Powder and she's not Jinx, who the hell is she? Does she have an identity? Does she know? Are we supposed to know? Are we supposed to care? But it's no time for questions. On to the next scene. Ambessa and her right-hand man, Rictus, are watching a tech attempt some kind of hex-tech experiment. We don't know what it is or what they're trying to do, but the experiment doesn't go well and the tech is vaporized. Ambessa is less than pleased, and we learn that Mel isn't the only one missing. Apparently Jace and Heimerdinger are also, which means those two, and presumably Echo, never returned from the white void space that they entered. They're just gone. Ambessa and Rictus wonder if the Black Rose group abducted them too, because without them, there's no one in the city who knows how to work Hextech.
The moment we seize control of this backwater, everyone with an inkling of talent vanishes.
Hold on a minute. You're trying to tell me that in the City of Progress there isn't a single person who can follow Jace and Victor's notes? No one knows how to make Hextech work but them? No one? Really?
That's not how it works. That's not how any of this works.
The point is, Ambessa isn't getting the weapons she wants, and she's feeling the walls close in around her. Next, we get a look at one of the security checkpoints in Zon, and the oppression of the people there. Then a PA system starts to blast more punk rock. Some smoke bombs and fireworks go off, and a hooded figure stands above the chaos. But it isn't Jinx. It's the mute girl impersonating Jinx, trying to give hope to the people of the Undercity. Next, Ambessa goes to talk with Caitlin, and this scene is kind of a mess, full of stilted, forced dialogue. Ambessa, after seeing Caitlin and Maddie together, warns her against getting into relationships with coworkers.
I suppose I don't need to advise you on the hazards of professional entanglements.
Which seems kind of out of character for her, but I'm sure it's there for a reason. The two have a back and forth about whether Jinx is really back and how to best track her down. But this stuff doesn't matter. What we're supposed to take away from this is that Caitlin and Bessa don't trust each other, and don't seem to like each other very much. Oh, and Caitlin's conscience is conveniently starting to catch up to her.
Why is peace always the justification for violence?
In another part of the city, we see Sallow as a husk of his former self. He was played by Mbessa, and the council has been supplanted by martial law, leaving him to wallow in self-pity. In his shimmer sessions with Lest, the Vixen tells Sallow about rumors of a healer who's working miracles in the fissures.
I keep hearing about this healer down in the fissures, way out on the fringes. They say he makes miracles happen.
She suggests that this mystery man, who we know as Victor, might be able to help Sallow too. In the Undercity, Sevika goes to see the character formerly known as Jinx. Sevika learns that formerly Jinx wasn't the one at the checkpoint attack, but says the incident has the whole Undercity riled, thinking that she is.
The whole Undercity's buzzing, saying you're back.
Sevika tries to guilt-trip formerly Jinx into coming to a rally by bringing up Silco.
Do you know how much he sacrificed to protect you? He believed in your potential.
Well, then he shouldn't have died!
And it becomes apparent again that Sevika and the whole Undercity still have no idea that Jinx is the one who killed Silco. It's really hard to believe that that's never come out. But in any case, formerly Jinx just isn't interested in fighting anymore, and she turns a frustrated Sevika away. But the encounter sends formerly Jinx to talk to Silco, or his empty chair, the ghost of him left in her broken psyche. But just like the mute girl, who was finally called by name so that I can stop calling her mute girl, Isha. Like Isha, Silco's empty chair can't talk back, and formerly Jinx is left without a comfort or direction. Actually, everyone seems pretty lost, except Mbessa and Rictus, who are roughly interrogating a prisoner until he gives up the location of Sevika's rally. At the rally, Sevika is trying to get a modest crowd to stand up against their oppressors, and she's still lugging that laughably impractical arm around. But her speech isn't going over well. Most of the people have gathered to see Jinx, but there is a vibe shift when Isha appears with a blue flare. Though unfortunately the momentum is cut short when a spear soars through the air and impales Sevika's big metal arm. Rictus is there with an army of enforcers, and they start to arrest the crowd, including Singed, who's there for some reason. But before being arrested, he cuts himself, and his blood starts to drip onto the pavement, which seems to awake his little pet project. When formerly Jinx returns home, she finds Isha gone. Then Sevika shows up. Not only did she tuck tail and run, which isn't like her, but she also got away, somehow. Sevika tells formerly Jinx that Isha went to the rally and got herself caught by the enforcers, and the news sends formerly into a spiral, and now she's Jinx again, I think. We see all the people who were arrested being taken to Stillwater Prison, and even though this is likely hours later, Singe's hand is still dripping blood, and his little science project is of course following the trail. Jinx and Sevika have cooked up a little Star Wars-inspired plot to infiltrate the prison, which works amazingly well. They set about freeing all the prisoners from the rally, and Jinx gets to experience firsthand just how much she means to the people. Finally, Jinx finds Isha, but the enforcers have found them, and so has the science project, Warwick. Somehow he got aboard a trolley and got out to the prison, then made it into an elevator and down to just the right floor of the prison. Warwick makes short work of the enforcers and has a fight with Jinx, while Sevika escapes with Isha. Parts of this sequence are actually well done. The animation is solid, and the speed ramps and slow-mo work. As long as you turn off your brain and don't think about the absurdity that led to this moment, it's an enjoyable sequence. Warwick easily overpowers Jinx and moves in for the kill when something happens. The beast stops and speaks her name. Her old name, Powder. Because, as we knew, Warwick is Vander. And on that note, the episode ends. And I'm reminded of Rings of Power, where one episode can have so much going on and yet so little actually happens. The plot is twisting itself into pretzel-shaped knots with holes the size of Mount Doom. The writers clearly don't care about continuing the story they started, and instead are intent on telling a different story, a story where our casts are merely there to serve the needs of the plot, drained of internal consistency or any kind of logic. That is when we actually get to see them on screen. In this episode, we still get nothing from Jace, Heimerdinger, Echo, Mel, or most notably, Vi. All of them are MIA, but I'm sure they have a good reason for sidelining half of our core cast. I'll bet the answers are waiting in the very next episode. Let's find out. Episode 5, Blisters and Bedrock, opens as we've come to expect. Only this time, it's a little less music video and a little more classical montage. The focus of this sequence is Vi, so we do finally discover where she's been in the weeks since episode 3. But don't hold your breath, because there are no real answers to be had here. We learn some of the what, but none of the why. Vi, it seems, has become a regular at an underground fighting club somewhere in the Undercity. Where this place is, or how it's remained unaffected by Piltover's invasion, isn't answered. All we know that Vi has spent the majority of her time there. She fights, she drinks, and then she sleeps off in a dingy hole in the ground that looks more like a jail cell than an apartment. And that's it. That's all she's been doing. Fighting, drinking, sleeping. Though we do see she's been seeing things. Flashes of Caitlin glimpsed in a crowd, though she isn't really there. And Jinx too, though she possibly has been there since it's later shown that Jinx knows where Vi is living. But this is another sore point for me. This in no way matches the Vi we knew previously. The writers want me to believe that Vi would abandon her principles, her friends, her allies, and abandon her home to do nothing while forced to storm in and place the lanes under their heel, all because her girlfriend dumped her. Nope, don't buy it. This is lazy storytelling and more character assassination. By the end of this sequence, we see Vi has degenerated and become little more than a feral animal. It's tragic, because like with other examples, the harm done to Vi is rather irreparable. The character will not come back from this. Anyway, the sequence ends after a particularly bad bender. Vi is hungover, beaten, and bleeding in her room. When Jinx appears, Vi flies at her, pinning her to the wall and choking her, but Jinx doesn't fight back. She tries to explain that Vander is still alive, and that he needs help. Of course, Vi doesn't believe her, and proceeds to slowly choke the life out of her. But Vi seems to see a glint in Jinx's eye, a flash of the girl she used to know. It's enough to get her to stop and let Jinx go. Gasping for breath, Jinx says that she can prove Vander is alive.
He needs our help. I can prove it.
Then we're back at Stillwater Prison. Caitlin is surveying the aftermath of Warwick's attack. During this, she monologues about how she thought all their efforts at tyrannical rule, peacekeeping occupation, would soon come to an end, but now she feels foolish for believing so. And we jump to an interrogation room with Singed, because you see, he stayed locked in his cell, though we don't understand why. He left a blood trail to lead Warwick to the prison, supposedly to enable his and others' escape.
Chin up, little one. We won't be staying long.
But when Warwick arrived, he suddenly became aware that he couldn't control his creation and protected himself by staying locked in the cell. But then why did he lure Warwick out there if it wasn't to escape? Did he know he couldn't control the beast, or did he only figure that out later? Was Warwick after Singed? Was it after him to help him or kill him? None of this is answered. The truth is, the writers just needed to bring Singed and Ambessa together, while also bringing Warwick Vander together with Jinx and Vi. So even though it leaves unanswered questions and plot holes behind, it achieves what the writers needed it to do. So in the interrogation, Caitlin and Ambessa are questioning Singed. Caitlin says they know Singed was Warwick's target. They know he summoned it.
The beast came for you. It was summoned by you.
Though I don't know how they figured that out, since Singed remains uncooperative throughout the scene. Caitlin throws around some threats about letting Singed rot in the depths of the prison, but he still isn't interested in talking just yet. So aside from setting up the connection between Singed and Ambessa, the other thing this scene achieves is to continue Caitlin's villain arc. The attack on the prison has renewed her ire for the Undercity, stoked her obsession with Jinx, and temporarily banished any wavering doubts she seemed to be having earlier. This also continues to make Caitlin a reactionary character who's pushed around by circumstance and shows little agency of her own. Next, we catch up with Mel. Some quick cuts helpfully remind us how she was abducted by the Black Rose group, caught in a void with thorny vines and chains. And I think the figure all wrapped up is Mel's assistant, which means she's dead, I guess? Mel herself is swallowed up in darkness and ends up in a stone cell of sorts. But she isn't alone. She's sharing the room with someone, and right off, we know something isn't right here. First and foremost, though we can see the other person lurking in the shadows behind Mel, she doesn't turn to look at the person she's speaking to. That she is speaking to them at all without knowing who it is, where she is, or what's going on strikes me as something that Mel wouldn't do. She's far too guarded and cautious to chat up a mystery voice after being dragged into a cell by an arcane force. But through the dialogue, we learn that they're being kept in something called an ocularum, and that Mel's assistant is indeed dead. Those thorny tendrils that held her also ripped her apart.
They killed my friend. Alora was there. And then...
But something the mystery guest says intrigues Mel enough to turn around and ask the man to step into the light so she can see him. He does, and she recognizes him as Kino, her brother, her supposedly dead brother. There's enough in this moment to make you question the official story about his death, but there's still something off about it, so I don't trust it just yet. Next, we're back with Jinx and Isha, and Vi, who agreed to follow them somewhere. I don't know where this is, but our characters are walking through tunnels deep underground. The only light comes from bioluminescent puffballs growing on the ground and walls. Jinx says the tunnels are where she lost Vander.
This is where I lost him.
And again, I don't know how any of them got from the prison to these tunnels. The prison is on an island off the coast of Piltover, like Alcatraz in San Francisco. Are these elaborate tunnels under the prison? Do they run under the bay, linking still water to the mainland? Why would they do that? Again, no answers. Though she agreed to come along, Vi still doesn't trust Jinx, and thinks she's leading them on a wild goose chase. The sisters snipe at each other, trading jabs and insults until it devolves into an actual fight. Isha attempts to join the brawl to gang up on Vi. Vi knocks Isha off her, hitting her in the nose in the process. The action stops the fight as Jinx immediately runs over to check on the girl. The show of compassion strikes Vi and steals away her desire to fight, but Isha wipes her bloody nose and slaps a bright red handprint on the ground. And we know what that'll lead to. But in case you haven't been keeping up, we have a scene to spell it all out for you. Back in Stillwater, Ambessa has gone to see Singed. Something Singed anticipated. Apparently he knows Ambessa's reputation and counted on her being interested in Warwick for its potential as a weapon.
I've never seen a beast of such savagery.
Ambessa meets Singed's expectation and offers him a deal.
You will serve me. My enemies will be yours. Your weapons will be mine.
She gives him his watch back and the deal is struck. Then Singed explains who Warwick really is.
He isn't a monster. He was once a man.
The mad scientist thought the man's mind too lost to recover.
The man forever lost in the bowels of the beast.
But now knows that enough of Vandal remains to respond to his surrogate daughters, though he is still compelled by blood.
Compelled only by the scent of blood.
Which means, yeah, while Vi and the others are trying to find Warwick, Warwick is now hunting them. In the Ocularum, Mel is talking to her brother, and Mel discovers that the cell is some kind of giant puzzle box. Meanwhile, Kino tells Mel that before he was captured, he was following a rumor that turned into a story. He says that their mother often traveled to a foreign land, that she fell in love and had an affair which resulted in a child.
Whatever that child inherited is of terrible interest to our captors.
Next, Singed is working on something, but it's not clear what yet. He and Ambessa are interrupted when Caitlin arrives. If she was unaware of Ambessa springing him from the prison, she doesn't show it, but she comes with a surprise of her own. She has tracked down records of who Singed was in a past life.
We have our answer now, don't we? Dr. Revik.
Caitlin readies her rifle and calls him a monster. Singed claims all he's done is for love. In a hidden room of his hidden laboratory lies a pod with a little girl inside. His daughter. Singed claims he is working to find a cure for the girl.
Precisely what are you trying to cure?
That affliction we all suffer. Death.
And he believes Warwick might just be the final piece he needs. This scene is okay as far as exposition dumps go, but it's still missing pieces, such as how Caitlin knew to go there in the first place, what she thinks of Ambessa pulling moves behind her back, or what she thought she was doing waving that rifle around. But we don't find out because we're back with Mel. She can see glowy patterns in the wall of her cell, like an ancient language she now understands, and continues to play with the puzzle. Kino isn't sure she should be messing around with it, but of course whoever she's talking to isn't really Kino. And they don't even try to let this one sit for a bit. They just give it away right here.
You aren't my brother.
The images of Kino flickers and changes into other people Mel knows, before turning into a copy of Mel herself. And then she's pulled back into the thorny void thing. A voice explains that the Black Rose people thought Kino might have been the mystery child, but he wasn't. It was, of course, Mel.
At first, it seemed plausible that he could have been the child. But then your mother led us to you, sister.
Oh, there's a big surprise! That's an incredible... I think I'm gonna have a heart attack and die from that surprise!
But a golden glow shines out from her back and explodes outward, destroying the chains. And now we have an answer to a question from the first episode of this season. How did Mel, Jace, and the others survive the rocket attack on the council chamber? Was it just a bit of contrived plot armor? While this show has been guilty of that at other points, it's not the case here. As it turns out, Mel has the ability to use magic. We see it manifest in this scene, and a similar golden glow shimmered across her back just before Jinx's rocket hit, meaning Mel, in her latent, unknown magic, shielded her and the others from the blast. And I have to say, I'm okay with this part of the reveal. I kind of wish they had built it up to it a little bit more, given us a little more time with Kino. It would have been nice to give us enough to overcome our initial suspicions of him, to believe that he might be real, to invest in his character, so that it would have hit with more impact when the truth came out. Also, a little more setup of this bastard child plot would have helped. If Mel had been uncovering parts of this during the first 3 episodes, trying to put the pieces together before she was abducted, and then having the final pieces delivered by Kino would have helped and allowed it to grow more organically, rather than just being dumped in a single expositional dialogue. However, I am glad we got an answer to one of the mysteries, and possibly an interesting turn in Mel's character. Next, we're back in the tunnels, and a gratuitous POV shot shows us that Warwick is indeed hunting down our characters via Isha's blood. Meanwhile, Vi and the others stumble into a room, a hidden study that once belonged to Vander. Among the items they find a note Vander wrote to Silco after their little falling out in the river.
I told myself what I did to you was for the greater good, that you deserved it. But the dirt was on both our hands.
The clumsy attempt at an apology note leaves Jinx and Vi wondering what would have been different if Silco had ever gotten that letter. That question seems to eat at Vi as she thinks about her own relationship with Jinx. A great moment of tension is built here, as the thundering noise echoes toward them.
We have to get out of here.
What follows is some of the best and worst this episode has to offer. Warwick storms toward the group, focusing on Isha, but Vi moves in to shield the others with her gauntlets. Vi and Warwick fight in a kind of staccato sequence, using flashing imagery and jump cuts to sell the chaotic nature of the action. But I don't think it works very well. It is needlessly choppy and disjointed. But we get to see Warwick's impressive healing ability, as he immediately regenerates from the damage Vi does to him. While this is going on, Jinx desperately tries to convince Vi that the monster she's fighting is actually Vander. And for some reason, with this life and death moment, Vi chooses to believe Jinx and drops her guard. Warwick charges at her, and we flash to what is probably my favorite scene in this whole season. In a flashback, we see younger versions of Vander and Silco, hanging out in a bar, along with a woman with purple hair. The woman, Felicia, is Violet and Powder's mother. On that particular night, Felicia breaks the news that will change everything.
I'm knocked up.
Felicia is terrified with the prospect of raising a child in the Undercity, but claims it is a responsibility she intends to share with Vander and Silco.
Because the second I told you, I put you on the hook. You're not allowed to fail anymore. For her. For me.
In just a couple of minutes, we get a sense of the bonds these characters shared. We learn that their plans for the Undercity, for Zahn, were grounded in a desire to provide for Felicia's baby, to give her a better future. As the flashback fades, we're back in the tunnel, darkened because all the puffballs blew out or something. Jinx ignites her lighter and approaches the hulking silhouette of Warwick, unsure of what happens before the lights went out. As she gets closer, we see that Warwick is holding Vi in a fatherly embrace. Vi calls out for Jinx to join in, and she does, followed quickly by Isha, for one of the weirdest family reunions ever. And the sequence is fine. It rushes the resolution of the man or beast question, but it's fine. What comes next, however, is something else. We jump to the chamber at the base of the Hex Gate, the place Jace, Heimerdinger, and Echo disappeared from. A figure in a white cloak removes something, a power cell it seems. But before he can leave, he is pulled into the white void space with the evil orb thing, and Jace reappears, though he looks older and more worn. Unkempt hair and a beard indicate some time has passed for him, while his trusty hammer looks different also, twisted and covered in that veiny corruption that we've seen before. The cloaked figure pulls back his hood to reveal that it's Sallow, who apparently did go to see Victor and did get healed and is now working for Victor, all of which happened off screen. But after exchanging a couple of "what are you doing here's,"
Sallow? What are you doing here?
Jace. One could ask the same question.
We find out that Victor can now speak through Sallow. An awkward conversation unfolds between the three of them, where Jace learns that Victor has been using his Hextech powers to heal people. But Jace responds that Hextech is actually a curse that must be destroyed.
Hextech isn't a miracle. It's a curse. We have to end it, Victor.
Victor divines that Jace has also touched the Arcane, but has been scarred by it.
You too have touched the Arcane. Your mind suffered.
Then Sallow tries to leave again with the power cells, but Jace says he can't let him, and Jace kills Sallow to stop him, crushing him with one swing of his hammer. And on that note, episode 5 ends. So after being absent from episode 4, we do get a look at what's been happening with characters like Vi and Jace. Their re-emergence into the story, accounting for the several weeks time jump, makes no sense. The writers continue to contort these characters, placing them where they need them to be for the story to progress, and they're simply rushing through it at a pace that makes it hard to care about anything. But we've got one episode left in part 2 of season 2. Can they pull out of this nosedive the story is entering? Let's find out. Episode 6, The Message Hidden Within the Pattern, opens with Victor witnessing Sallow's final moments. And right off the bat, things are a little weird. First we see Victor as a vaporous apparition, floating in empty space. And he's not alone there, because Skye is there with him. Skye, who is Victor's former assistant, who was killed by the Hex Corps. It's not clear if this is really Skye, or what's left of her consciousness, trapped in whatever netherrealm this is, or if it's a product of Victor's imagination. The other odd thing here is that Victor seems oddly detached and dispassionate that one of his devotees was just murdered. He doesn't seem to care at all. Victor remarks that Jace isn't Jace, but that another will is working within him.
That isn't Jace. There is another will at work within him.
And just tuck that moment away for now, because we will come back to it later. Anyway, Victor is more interested in the evil orb thing that Jace encountered. Victor says it's a complex singularity that, well, I'll just let him say it.
This is a sophisticated conjuration.
A singularity simultaneously self-replicating and self-annihilating.
Right. Did that make any sense to you?
Nope.
Me neither. So we still don't know what the evil orb thing is, how it got inside the hex gate, or what it's doing now. But never mind all that. We've got more plot to speed through. After the credits, Singe is being brought to a Noxian ship in the bay. On board the ship, Ambessa is training Caitlin to fight. There's a VO monologue about strength and might, and a lot of drivel that's trying to sound important, but it's not.
Tunnels in your eyes, lava in your veins, shadows in your heart. This is the truth of combat.
I'm confused. No, wait, I think maybe you're confused.
At the end of their sparring match, Singe arrives on the ship and claims that he's built a tracker that will help him locate Warwick. Though he doesn't know the exact location, he knows he's somewhere in Zaun.
I've tracked him to Zone.
Let's hunt a beast.
Though I'm not sure why they would bring him all the way out to the ship to report that, just so they can leave the ship and go back to the mainland. But this revelation takes us to Zaun, where Vi, Jinx, and Isha are taking Warwick Vander to the commune where Victor is. Apparently, after their group hug, one of them got the idea to see if the magical healer guy could heal Vander. Now, I don't know how they decided to do this, or why jaded, cynical characters like Vi and Jinx would believe rumors about a mystical healer guy. But that all happened off camera, between episodes, so I guess it doesn't matter. The group is met at the gates by a familiar face, Huck. He asks them to leave their weapons at the gate because the commune is a place of peace and healing.
I must ask you to surrender your weapons. This is a place of peace.
Jinx answers this request by sticking her gun in Huck's face, but Vi reluctantly agrees, dropping her gauntlets. Jinx rolls her eyes but follows suit, but not before popping her Hextech gem out of her gun. Just before they enter, there is a shot that lingers on Isha, as the girl eyes Vi's gauntlets. In the complex, Huck leads the group to Victor, who extends his hand to Warwick Vander. We see that both man and beast lie inside Vander, and some force knocks Victor back a bit. He hears Sky's voice saying that he has limits to what he can do, but Victor replies that it's worth the risk.
He is worth the risk.
What that risk is isn't explained, but Victor agrees to do what he can to help Vander. In a sequence of what seems like days, Victor and Sky seem to dig through Vander's fractured psyche, and we get an impressive sequence that looks like animated watercolor, showing Vander's memories of Vi and Powder and their family. It's beautifully done, but it doesn't advance the story very much, nor does it explain what exactly Victor is doing to Warwick Vander. Elsewhere in the compound, Vi and Powder talk over their memories of their parents. Vi wonders if they might be able to find a new home within the commune. As if in answer to that, we jump to Singe, who has arrived at the gates of the commune, with Ambessa, Caitlin, and a generous number of Noxian soldiers. Apparently, Singe's tracker has led them right to it. Hold up, wait a minute. Didn't he mention that the tracker he was building wouldn't be precise?
This will allow you to locate your beast.
Not precisely.
Yep, that's what I thought he said. Ended up being more accurate than he thought, I guess. Anyway, Huck tells the Noxians what he told Vi's group, that they are welcome without their weapons. Ambessa doesn't have a lot of patience for that, but before Rictus can make that point, Singe steps up and suggests that the Herald, that's Victor, might be one of his former students, and he asks to go in to speak with him. And for some reason, Ambessa allows this, though she has no reason to trust Singe that much, and she hasn't been one to show restraint, especially when she believes force is called for. So I'm not sure why she's on board with this. In the compound, Victor is still working on Warwick Vander, and there's still no real sense of how much progress he's making, if any. And somehow, Singe is able to walk right into the room and declares that he knows Victor's powers are declining.
Your power is finite, diminished by every use.
I don't know how he knows this, but there's more. Singe says that the regenerative effects of Warwick's blood will stabilize Victor, but again, there's no sense of how he knows all this. Victor rejects this idea, saying that it would destroy Warwick Vander in the process. Then they talk about evolution and transcending nature, something Victor believes that he's accomplishing with his commune. Singe relents and agrees to leave, but on his way out he says that if Victor dies, his whole community will follow.
If you perish, this community is soon to follow.
What? So if Victor dies, his magic dies, and all the people he's healed will die too. First of all, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but secondly, if it is true, why would Victor be draining his ability to heal Vander, if, by the end of it, he'll just die anyway? I don't know, and the show doesn't bother to answer that either. Vi sees Singe leave Victor's sanctuary, and for some reason she decides to follow him. Outside the compound, Ambessa and her forces have retreated for the moment, and Singe somehow knows where they are. Vi continues to follow him through a canyon outside the complex, but she's jumped by Caitlin, who's hiding out in the canyon, keeping watch for something. The two tussle for a moment and exchange some banter.
Your hair. You look like an angry oil slick.
Don't sugarcoat it, Cupcake.
Which is quite playful considering how their last meeting ended. And we get another exchange of, "What are you doing here?" Then we're in Mbessa's camp, somewhere in the canyon. Singe tells Mbessa that Victor's efforts will destroy Warwick's usefulness. Mbessa concludes that they will have to use force after all, though she was fully ready to do so before, and this way they bought a few hours so more plot can happen. Caitlin arrives at the tent, and she's brought a captured Vi with her. Hold up. I'm confused. Not about the show, but about the writers. Do they want us to buy that after their brief heart-to-heart, Caitlin suddenly turned on Vi and arrested her? Or do they want us to know this is a part of a ruse, because after a brief heart-to-heart with Vi, Caitlin has now decided to betray Mbessa? I really don't know which possibility the writers think we'll go with here. Do we think this is the first season Caitlin again? In which case, it's totally a ruse. Or do we think it's still second season Caitlin, in which case, Vi is screwed? For my part, I instantly believe that Caitlin had switched sides again, because of that little look in her eye when Vi called her cupcake.
Don't sugarcoat it, cupcake.
It was like a keyword that unlocked Caitlin 1.0. Next, we see Jace is in the canyon, outside the commune. How he knew how to go there, or how he evaded all the Noxian soldiers in the canyon isn't made clear, but with everyone gathering in the same place, we know things are about to go down. Caitlin leaves Vi with Mbessa and walks through the camp, watching as the army prepares for an assault. In the commune, Jinx tells Isha that she's been thinking about how the young girl has changed her life, and we see that Caitlin and Singe have come back into the commune and have gone back into the room with Warwick. In the Noxian camp, Mbessa gets very chatty with Vi, expelling exposition about how she was able to exploit Vi's absence to turn Caitlin.
I owe you thanks. Your absence provided a vacuum I was able to fill.
Though Caitlin was the one who left Vi, so that's a bit of revisionism, either by Mbessa or by the writers, not sure which. Mbessa has some respect for Vi, but knows her presence will only cause problems, especially when it comes to Caitlin's loyalties. Though again, given the recent history, there's absolutely no evidence that she's more loyal to Vi than Mbessa. That doesn't matter. The situation is clear. To mitigate risk, Mbessa believes she has to kill Vi, but Vi isn't the least bit intimidated or worried.
Just shut the up.
Because as it should be obvious, this was all a ruse. As Vi breaks out of her restraints that weren't actually holding her, we get a quick flash that shows us how Vi and Caitlin set all this up. The sniper slipped Vi around from her rifle that turns into a net, which Vi uses to restrain Mbessa. At the same time, Caitlin knocks out Singed. I do kind of wonder why she waited to the last possible moment to do this, but we jump to Jace, who has snuck into the commune with his hammer.
I must ask you to surrender your weapons.
But Jace isn't doing well. He's hearing voices and seeing things. We see flashes of things that don't make much sense, and Jace almost blasts a kid who's just sitting on the ground. Though the kid doesn't take it personally and leads Jace to Victor. Okay, Victor is doing a floaty thing and is in some kind of a trance. Caitlin tells Warwick that Vi sent her to get him out of the commune.
I'm going to get you out of here.
But she's jumped by Rictus, because he was following her, I guess. But before he can kill Caitlin, Jinx appears and tries to shoot him, and we get our first look at what those runes he carries do. Apparently they capture energy, so that Jinx's shot doesn't work. Wait, how did he sneak in his weapon? If Mbessa could sneak people into the complex with weapons, why hasn't she? Why are her people preparing an assault on the front gate when she could sneak them in the back? Never mind. I should stop asking questions. None of this is following any kind of logic. Stuff is just kind of happening, so let's go. Rictus and Jinx fight. It's a lot of flash without much substance. Rictus gets the upper hand and is about to kill Jinx when Warwick Vander wakes up to protect her. Ouch, he's gonna feel that one in the morning. But yay, Vander's back. Caitlin isn't happy to see Jinx, but Vi runs in with Isha. Okay, so what was the point of Fate capturing Vi and leaving her with Mbessa, if she was just gonna sneak back to the camp again? And Vi has Caitlin's rifle too, which she somehow got into the compound. What the hell's even happening here? Is that guard at the entrance anymore?
This is a place of peace.
Right, sorry, asking questions again. So everyone's back together again, and it's all happy, except Jace activates his hammer and lets off one hell of a blast, which hits Victor dead on. The whole compound sees the blast, and Victor has a hole blown clean through him, and it seems like he's dead. One by one, all of Victor's people fall to the ground and let out a chilling howl. Vi and the others race outside to see what's happened, and then from back inside the building comes another howl. With Victor gone, Vander has reverted back to Warwick. The beast emerges, mindless and savage. First he goes for Rictus, who gets torn apart, and of course right at that moment, Mbessa shows up with her army. Everyone starts fighting, while Victor's voice offers a monologue about the frail nature of man.
I understand now. The message hidden within the pattern.
Vi is injured and goes down. Jinx is injured and goes down. Anisha decides her moment has come. The little girl runs forward and scoops up Jinx's gun. She then proceeds to stuff the 2 Hex-Tech gems she took from Vi's gauntlets in with the original one Jinx had in there in the first place. And we all know what happens when you set off a bunch of those gems at once. Isha runs and slides right under Warwick. She points the gun at him and pulls the trigger, which sets off a massive explosion. And that is the end of the episode, and the end of part 2. And yeah, I don't have too much to say to wrap this up. The plot, or plots, are needlessly complicated with too many moving parts. They aren't developing any of the storylines, and the characters continue to swing wildly from one disposition to another. So I'm left again feeling that Arcane Season 2 is fine. If you turn off your brain and don't ask any questions or anything. But if you apply the smallest bit of critical analysis, the whole thing implodes. But then again, there are 3 episodes left. We still don't know what's going on with Echo or Heimerdinger, and maybe even with all this nonsense, they'll be able to stick the landing. Maybe. Episode 7, Pretend Like It's the First Time, starts by showing us what occurred in the aftermath of Episode 6, the massive explosion Isha set off with the Hex Gems. Just kidding, we don't know what happened with that yet. Instead, Arcane decides now is the time to follow up with a character who's been missing for the entirety of Part 2. But that isn't the biggest surprise here. The biggest surprise is that this episode does not open with a music video montage. Can they do that? Instead of a montage, we open with a series of close-up shots showing someone working in a rustic study, filled with open flame candles, burning right next to stacks of books and loose paper, and a skull. The shots and editing are clearly trying to obscure for the moment who this is and where it is. Interesting choice to start off disorienting the audience when they are looking for answers to a cliffhanger ending.
The greatest evil.
After a moment, we get a series of jump cuts, jittery flashes showing us that this is Echo, or a Echo. It's either 2 Echoes, and through some corrupt evil orb nonsense, the Echo we know gets flung into the body of the Echo from a parallel dimension. And we know it's an alt dimension because Echo looks different. A refined haircut, set of clothes, and pierced ears shows us that this version of Echo isn't a lower class citizen of the Undercity. But the thing that really hammers home the point is the appearance of Jinx, or should I say Powder, a teenage, well-adjusted, seemingly normal Powder. Of course, disorientation and a healthy dose of PTSD causes Echo to flip out at the sight of her. But then things get even weirder when a very alive Benzo walks in.
What in the 7 sumps is all this racket?
Echo can't help but hug his former mentor, leaving the others confused.
What's gotten into him?
Haha, yes, very funny. After the opening credits, the world swirls with out-of-focus color, before solidifying into a dreamlike soft focus sequence, showing Echo being ushered into the last drop, where Vander is alive, healthy, and quite happy-looking. And the last drop is not a dark, dingy dive, but instead a nice, brightly lit community bar. Powder presses Echo on why he's out of sorts.
What is up with you? You've been out of it all day.
And he answers honestly, saying he feels like he woke up in the wrong universe.
Feel like I woke up in the wrong universe.
Of course, Powder thinks he's speaking euphemistically, chalking it up to him being tired. All the while, Echo is absent-mindedly doodling a picture of the evil orb thing. But the hits just keep on coming, because next, Milo and Clanger walk up. These versions also look like upper-class yuppies, who wear nice clothes and whatever that is on Milo's upper lip. Anyway, the more John Hughesy things get, the more Echo loses it. And I'm getting more annoyed at how pretentious it all is, especially when 2 different characters remark on how essential Powder is to the group.
Where would you be without her?
A few moments later.
What would they do without you?
These 2 comments come within a minute of each other. Okay, writers, we get it. You want us to believe that Powder was the glue holding our core cast together, even though that has no real basis on anything that's come before. Actually, in the first season, Vi was the one at the center of the group. But as with other areas of Season 2, the writers are intent on retconning their own story so they can subvert it for something else. Echo is not doing well. He rushes out of the last drop and into an alley where he says goodbye to his lunch. And then he meets another familiar face. Heimerdinger is there also. And not only is it Heimerdinger, but it's our Heimerdinger.
One can't go shouting from the rooftops about being thrust into parallel dimensions.
Heimerdinger seems far better adjusted to this new reality, and we find out why.
The anomaly also scattered us across time. How long have you been here? 1,128 days, 6 hours, and 20 minutes.
Wait, so Heimerdinger's been in this alt reality for over 1,000 years.
Give or take.
Why? It seems a bit excessive, and I can't see any narrative or character reason for this. But then again, I can't see a good reason for this altered dimension hop at all, and this scene doesn't give any reason to it. It's honestly a bit of a mess. Echo asks if Jace also wound up in this alternate world, but Heimerdinger says that Jace wound up somewhere else.
I fear he may have wound up elsewhere. The anomaly behaved differently around him.
But did it? Jace was the only one to walk up and touch the damn thing, so yes, it reacted to that. But there's no evidence that it behaved differently to Jace. At least, nothing that I can see that would lead Heimerdinger to this conclusion. Echo asks if Heimerdinger has found a way to get home, which seems like an odd thing to ask. The professor already admitted that he had lost hope Echo would ever arrive in the same dimension.
I grew skeptical you'd arrive, even during my unusually long lifetime.
So it's probable that if he already knew a way to get home, he would have used it. But once again, our characters aren't using their brains. Instead, they're following a clunky script, so that we get the exposition we need to fill in all the WTFs that are going on here. But Heimerdinger tells Echo that not only has he not found a way back, he believes it's impossible, because Hex Tech was never invented in this reality.
I'm afraid Hex Tech was never invented here.
Without it, the evil orb thing doesn't exist there either.
Give it time to settle. This place will grow on you, you'll see.
Of course, Echo isn't willing to accept that answer.
We don't belong here.
But before much else can be said, Powder finds them and asks if Echo is willing to go with her to see Vi. But we jump to Jace, a young Jace, not the old man Jace we've seen before. So I suppose we're seeing what happened to him when he was disappeared by the evil orb thing. Jace is laying on the ground, surrounded by a dense, misty fog, and upon sitting, he throws up. A lot of that going around. Jace gets up and finds his hammer laying a few feet away. Picking it up, the hammer starts to activate, and then short circuits and powers down. At this, Jace decides not to pick it up and drops it again. Why? I don't know, but he sees a hooded figure in the mist that vaguely resembles the wizard, the one who saved him and his mom from a blizzard years ago. Chasing the figure leads Jace out of the fog and into a nightmarish hellscape, a place that I think is supposed to be Piltover, which has been utterly destroyed.
Boy, that escalated quickly.
Back with Echo and Powder, the two are in a room that Jinx once used when she was working for Silco. It's a bit warmer and more wholesome in this reality. Powder walks over to a small shrine set up for Vi, and talks to her the way that people talk to loved ones at grave sites.
I got the not living up to my potential speech from Vander again.
So yeah, Vi is dead in this reality. Echo still can't reconcile his old reality with this new one, and for some reason, asks Powder if she killed Vi.
Was it you?
Something that Powder doesn't take very well.
You gave us the tip. We went on that job because of you.
It seems that in this reality, Vi and the others attempted the same heist they attempted in our dimension. Only when the gemstone detonated, Vi was killed in the blast. This led to a number of different outcomes and explains why there's no Hex Tech in this dimension. She pushes them away and Echo leaves.
You should leave. Go, before I do something I regret.
And this is far too melodramatic. We don't have enough connection with these alternate personalities to be invested for this to land effectively. But next we see both Echo and Jace as they wander around, while Heimerdinger does his best Bob Dylan impression.
Go and make some mistakes, you live and you learn.
Jace sees more of the ruined city of progress, passing petrified husks that used to be people, and now he has his hammer with him. Clearly he went back for it, but it makes me wonder why. Why he dropped it, why he left it, and why he'd go back for it later. And I kind of wonder how he found it again inside that suffocating mist. Seems like it would be easy to lose things in there. But Echo finds his way to Jace's old apartment, which has been ruined by a Hex Tech explosion. But Echo finds a bunch of gemstone shards embedded in the walls of the apartment. And I have questions. We don't have a lot to go on as far as the timeline goes, but it seems it's been a few years since this event happened, so I'm not sure why the building was left the way it is, or why no one recovered all the evidence from this scene. But I guess that's not really important, at least the show doesn't think it is. The music montage ends as Echo comes back to seek out Heimerdinger again. Elsewhere, Jace is spooked when some of the petrified corpses aren't corpses, but something that move. Ouch. Maybe he shouldn't have gone back for that thing after all. Jace continues to tumble and falls through a fissure into a cave, and I still have no idea what this is all about. But apparently, Echo thinks he can use the gemstone fragments to recreate Hex Tech, and by extension the anomaly that brought them there, so they can use it to go home. I don't know what made him think this would be possible, but Heimerdinger doesn't know either, and throws cold water on the idea.
I don't believe this can be done.
Along with a warning.
Tampering with the Arcane never ends well, lad.
But Echo won't take no for an answer, and comes back with this.
You said I was your pupil. I need a professor. Better yet, a partner.
He basically tries to guilt trip a being who is thousands of years old with a petulant child's ploy.
You said I was your pupil.
Which already doesn't sound like something Echo would do, but as bad as it is, the result is even worse, because it works. Heimerdinger immediately relents.
Oh, blast nozzles. How could I forsake a brilliant lad in need?
Trampling down his own sound argument and his conscience because... reasons. The script said so. I don't know, it's pathetic.
Oh, blast nozzles.
If you're gonna have Heimerdinger refuse to help, have him refuse. If he's going to agree, have him agree. But don't have him flip-flop in the span of a few seconds because Echo makes a pathetic play at emotional blackmail.
You said I was your pupil.
Anyway, Jace wakes up an unknown amount of time later, and the things that were chasing him stopped, I guess. Jace is in a cave of some sort.
A cave of wonders.
And his leg is broken, so he can't climb out. But he manages to scrape together a few pieces of plant life to make a fire. He sets his broken leg himself, and dresses it with strips of cloth he got from somewhere. Also, his leg seems to be infected with some stringy ooze. Time passes. Jace survives by eating something. Time keeps passing. Jace slowly goes crazy, thinking about all the choices he's made, the mistakes that led him to where he is. Eventually, he cannibalizes the hammer to make a brace for his broken leg. Impressive he was able to do that with no tools except rocks.
Tony Stark was able to build this in a cave! With a box of scraps! I'm not Tony Stark.
Though with the extra support, he is slowly able to climb out of the cave. Echo brings Powder to a spot in the sewer where he's painted a mural of Vi, and they have an awkward, clumsy conversation because Echo wants Powder's help with his project too.
Alright, out with it. What do you want from me?
Jace makes his way closer and closer to the remains of the Hex Gate, while Echo and his group bond as they work together. And they succeed. Kind of. The singularity they make runs time backwards a few seconds.
It's a time loop! Huh?
A time loop?
They experiment with it to see how far back they can go, and Echo figures out it's 4 seconds, because at 5 seconds, Heimerdinger exploded.
The limit is 4 seconds.
Are you certain, my boy? What were the indicators?
No, don't ask questions, just go with it. Anyway, Heimerdinger wants to fiddle around with the device, while Echo and Powder attend a party.
Please go change before the party.
Yeah, a party. Because on top of the time-traveling alternate dimension BS, we also have to deal with some teen drama BS too. At the party, Echo and Powder dance in a staccato sequence, and the writers took what was essentially a quirky childhood friendship and turned it into a forced, angst-ridden romance. Gee, I hope the alternate Echo had romantic interest in Powder, because if he didn't, he's going to be in all kinds of trouble when our Echo hops back out of his body. Elsewhere, Jace somehow gets to the top of the Hex Gate, bad leg and all, and at the very center he finds a petrified figure with a hammer, the version of his hammer we've seen before. At this, Jace thinks he understands.
This is where it all started, isn't it? The end of Piltover.
And seeing his wizard friend again, Jace says he wants to go back to his time, so he can stop this disaster from happening.
Send me back.
The wizard gives Jace the crazy hammer and sends him back. Intercut with this, we see that Echo returns from his party to find that Heimerdinger has built some kind of contraption. It creates a big anomaly from the small anomaly and draws in a lot of power. That means they can go home now, right? Well, for some reason, one of the cables isn't connected. Heimerdinger hops off the device and connects the cable, and disappears. He just vanishes. How? Why? Is he dead? Did he get transported somewhere else? The show doesn't tell us, but this sure reads like a death.
I must say that since I've met you, lad, I've truly lived.
So that's it for Heimerdinger. They just blink him out of existence because... I don't know. But I think he deserved better than to be unexisted like that. In the same flash, the Echoes get separated. Alternate Echo ends up laying on the floor, while our Echo winds up in the magic field. Just long enough for Powder to see him. Yeah, Echo disappears too, though I think we're supposed to conclude that he's gone back to our world. Right before the credits roll, Powder's in her hideaway, in front of the Vi shrine, and she places a gift Echo gave her in a drawer next to a bag of hex gems. Wait, if she had those this whole time, why was she playing around with the shards Echo found? And now that Powder knows about hex tech and what the gems do, does that mean she'll be able to create it in that world? Will this lead to a similar catastrophe we just saw with Jace? Did Heimerdinger and Echo just doom another dimension because Echo wanted to go back home?
I'm gonna find a way back.
As you can probably guess, none of these questions get addressed. Either the writers didn't think of them, or they chose to leave it ambiguous. Either way, it leaves problems behind, and damages the already sullied morality of our characters. Honestly, we're approaching Marvel Phase 5 levels of moral bankruptcy here.
They'll never know what you sacrificed for them.
To sum it up, we took a whole episode on 2 side stories. One to backfill information that we should have already had concerning what happened to Jace, and the other an alternate reality fan fiction. There's little internal consistency here, as the show hasn't given us enough to understand what's going on. Echo and presumably Heimerdinger too had their consciousnesses or spirits or whatever flung into alternate dimension cells. But Jace was physically transported to the future. I have no idea if it was the future of our dimension or an alternate dimension in which Piltover experienced the same fate that our dimension is about to experience. But did the wizard also send Echo and Heimerdinger into that alternate reality? Is the evil orb thing only controlled by this evil wizard, or is the evil wizard trying to stop the evil orb thing? Again, I have a lot of questions, so let's keep going and see if we'll get some answers to them. Episode 8, Killing is a Cycle, opens as we finally find out what happened in the aftermath of Episode 6. Nope, just kidding again. No, this episode begins with Mel. We are back at the last point we saw her, as she's bound by thorny chains, and a golden magic glow emanates from Mel's back and blasts the chains away. When the light and magic dissipate, we see that Mel is in the middle of a magic symbol drawn on the ground of the throne room we've seen before. It's the throne room from Mel's flashback in Season 1. We see the room has gone to ruin, overgrown with foliage. As she tries to get her bearings, a voice calls out to her. Whoever it is has taken the form of the young queen we saw Ambessa execute in the aforementioned flashback. This magic user and Mel talk over the particulars of who Mel is.
I'm one of you? A mage?
A mage called an empath. One who is able to discern the hearts of others, as well as bend the magic of others to her own use.
A conduit and a mirror.
It's a fun bit of exposition, but from there the Black Rose person tells Mel that their attempts to stop Ambessa are because they have foreseen a disaster that will destroy Piltover.
A calamity is approaching.
And they hope that Mel will side with them to oppose her mother. The Black Rose person gives Mel a beaded necklace with a charm of some sort.
What is this?
Welcome to your future.
Right, anyone know what that means?
Nope.
Me either. But apparently Mel does, because she takes the necklace and puts it on. And we jump to a short period later, as Mel leaves the city her mother conquered. After the opening credits, we finally, for real this time, return to Piltover and see what happened after Isha's explosive sacrifice. But we are not with our protagonists. Instead, we're with Ambessa's side. Rictus and the other soldiers who fell in the battle are being laid to rest. Ambessa takes the runes that once adored Rictus's weapon. Elsewhere on the compound, Victor's followers lay strewn on the ground, apparently dead. As for Victor himself, well, he should be dead, seeing that Jace blasted a hole through his chest roughly where his heart should be. But Singe is hooking Warwick's body up to Victor, saying the beast's blood should sustain Victor, but it rests on him to do the rest.
The blood should sustain Victor for a short while. Beyond that, it is up to his own will.
And I don't know what that means. There's a strange bit where Singed apologizes for not being able to save Rictus, but Ambessa replies,
"We do not lament a warrior's death. We avenge it."
The thing is, Warwick killed Rictus, and Singed made Warwick. So technically, you'd think that Singed would be the one that would draw some of the ire, since it was his weapon who killed her right-hand man. But I guess Ambessa's blaming Jace for that, since he shot Victor, which caused Warwick to go crazy. But as far as we know, Ambessa didn't see that happen. Singed was unconscious because Caitlin knocked him out, so I'm not sure how or why Ambessa would have the knowledge to draw this conclusion. But as before, with this season, plot has to happen, so logic takes a back seat. Anyway, whatever Singed is doing appears to work, because we hear the disembodied voice of Victor speak out.
I am grateful.
Apparently Victor's body may be dead, but he's still alive in that weird other space we saw him floating in earlier. Then, instead of using a ghost voice, Huck's body rises from the ground and starts speaking for Victor. Now you might be asking yourself, if he can just cast his voice from the ether, why would he go all horror show and speak through a corpse? Oh, it gets better, because next all the corpses start talking. Victor says they are all one.
We are one. This is the glorious evolution.
What? What does that mean? And did Victor's followers know they were all melding into a super being? Did they become part of it by choice? Or did they have no idea what they were signing up for when they were just looking for some healing?
This is a place of peace.
So many questions. But it doesn't stop there. Victor mentions the evil orb thing inside the Hex Gate could help him complete his work. and Ambessa wants to know if it'll help Victor evolve others.
This will allow you to evolve others?
Wait, what evolution does she think he's talking about? All his followers are dead, and now he's puppeteering them like an evil necromaniacal villain. What exactly does Ambessa see as an upside here? I don't know, but she promises Victor to help him reach the Hex Gate.
I will deliver you to this anomaly if you agree to empower every soldier I bring you.
By making them his puppets too? Writers, this isn't making sense. Ambessa is a highly cynical, paranoid person who doesn't trust easily. By all rights, she should be at odds with Victor, not offering him help. I know I sound like a broken record at this point, but it's because the show is repeatedly tossing any semblance of storytelling out the window in a rush for a nonsensical series of events motivated by nothing but the writer's own whims. The plot, world building, and most of all the characters are all being eviscerated by the sheer weight of everything they aren't explaining. And with each additional hit, the damage is compounded until there's nothing left for an audience member like me to hold on to. No reason to stay invested, no reason to care. One more thing to note about this scene. Victor says he's going to evolve all those who are willing.
I will evolve all those willing.
And you should remember this, because it will be important later. Next we see some disjointed imagery of what happened just before and the seconds after Isha set off Jinx's gun. The imagery plays out like a haunted dream Vi is having. When she opens her eyes, she thinks she sees Vander for a moment, but it turns out to be Loris, the big enforcer guy with the shield. Vi was badly wounded, and Loris says it took 3 doctors to patch her up.
Wasn't sure you'd pull through.
Vi immediately asks about where the others are, and Loris doesn't answer. He's especially evasive about Jinx.
Jinx. Caitlin wanted to be here, to tell you herself.
And we jump to Caitlin and Maddie looking over a map. It seems Ambessa is massing her forces for an attack on the city, which, if we take more than a moment to think about it, makes no sense. Piltover is a massive port of trade across Runeterra, and the Hex Gate makes the city invaluable to other nations, including Noxus, so it's highly unlikely that the rulers of Noxus would sit idly by while one of their generals mounts a unilateral attack on it. This shouldn't be possible. Even in this scene, Caitlin should be asking how they can get a message to Noxus, asking them to rein in their rogue general, but no, that doesn't even come up. However, it is interesting that this is the first time we've seen Caitlin and Maddie together since episode 4, and there is no romantic spark between them anymore. Maddie does try to reach out and touch Caitlin, but she pulls away from her. Boy, that's awkward. But then Vi barges in, and if you thought they wanted to fake us out into believing Jinx might be dead.
Arrested?
They held it for all of 20 seconds.
Jinx.
Arrested?
Yeah, Jinx isn't dead. She's just in a jail cell. Caitlin dismisses Maddie from the room. Cue more awkward lesbian drama. Vi and Caitlin have another argument in which Caitlin actually admits her fault in siding with Ambessa. She explains that Jinx turned herself in once they had gotten Vi to safety.
The only thing Jinx cared about was getting you to safety. Then she just surrendered.
Caitlin thinks Jinx should face judgment for what she's done, but Vi says that Jinx has changed.
Who decides who gets a second chance?
Or third chance, or fourth chance, or fifth, or whatever we are on now. And again, we get to see just how easily Caitlin is to manipulate. In the prison, Caitlin brings Jinx a tray of food, though we see that Jinx hasn't touched the last tray she was given. Jinx, it seems, is ready to be executed for what she's done.
If you're here to kill me, make sure to finish the job.
From what we see, she's pretty much given up on, well, everything. A broken husk of a character that we once knew. Caitlin, however, says that she's going to give Jinx another chance, though nothing she could do would make up for what she's done.
Hating you? I've hated myself.
I really want to like this scene, but it's too contrived and forced, and missing anything that would lend it the emotional core the writers think they have. Both Caitlin and Jinx are jumbled disasters of characters. Their arcs a mess of contradictory actions. Here, in this moment, their entire motivations seem to be based on other characters. Caitlin has snapped out of her villain arc because she has feelings for Vi, and Jinx isn't Jinx anymore because of Isha, a character who isn't even a character. Isha is and was a plot device, a mini MacGuffin whose sole reason for existing is to shortcut a complex mental emotional journey for Jinx, taking her from being a homicidal schizophrenic to a loving surrogate sister to a depressed suicidal husk. So because they shorted us on the time and character beats that would have been necessary to build the appropriate pathos, this scene does not work. It ends up as a painfully clunky, hollow melodrama. But the best part is, however important you think Isha is, she isn't mentioned once in this entire episode. No one asks about her, explains what happened to her. She isn't given a burial, a eulogy, or a second thought. They give more time to honoring Rictus than Isha.
Even to a guy like me, that's cold.
So in summation, The writing here is terrible. Elsewhere, a figure in a white hood has arrived at the city, and though they're trying to be coy about it, it's clear that this is Mel. Cut to the repaired but not in use council chamber, where Jace is reliving the bombing. Then the white hooded person walks in, and yeah, it's Mel. And you have to wonder about the timeline here. When was the stuff with Mel happening in relation to everything else? How long did it take her to get back to Piltover from wherever she was? And you know what? I dealt with it in Rings of Power, I can deal with it here. So in the past few hours, Elrond has convinced Gil-galad to send the army to Eregion instead of Mordor, rode to Khazad-dûm to talk with Durin, then rode back to join the army and made it all the way to Eregion. Yeah, sure, why not? Mel and Jace talk around each other instead of to each other with a lot of dialogue to reaffirm what we already know, though Jace picks up pretty quickly that Mel is a mage.
You're the reason we didn't die in the attack.
And though Jace has cleaned up a bit, he's still not doing well. While Mel is talking, we see more flashing imagery of the disaster encroaching upon them, and he suddenly spins and blasts apart one of the council members' chairs. Which seems like an odd thing to do, but a moment later the chamber is invaded by some kind of robot. A robot created and controlled by Victor. Victor says he wants to bring about his goals peacefully, but the Noxian he allied with has different plans.
I would prefer to do so in peace. The Noxian has other intentions.
Oh gee, Victor, if you're okay sticking a warlord and her whole army on the city, doesn't sound like you're interested in peace. Which he isn't, since when Jace refuses to help Victor, the robot attacks and seems ready to kill them both. But Mel and Jace together are able to overcome the robot. In Jinx's cell, she has a visit from Silco, and this time he does speak to her, albeit in semantic mumbo-jumbo.
We build our own prisons, bars forged of oaths, codes, commitments. We inhabit these cells, these identities, and call them us.
Honestly, I think it would have worked better if Jinx had gotten a phantom visit from Isha here instead of Silco. Let Jinx's mind form a voice for her so she speaks for the first time. Or at the very least, she should be there alongside Silco, silently standing in judgment. But anyway, this pseudo-therapy session is cut short when the real Vi runs in with the keys to Jinx's cell. Vi unlocks the door and embraces Jinx as a sister again. And again, I wish this worked, but they haven't earned it, and Jinx kicks Vi off her. She grabs the keys and locks Vi in the cell. She tells Vi not to worry about her anymore.
You don't need to feel guilty about being happy. You deserve to be with her.
Okay, odd thing for Jinx to say, but moving on. Jinx drops the keys on the floor and slips away into the shadows, and Vi is left in the jail cell. Back in the council chamber, Jace addresses a large group who have assembled together. Council members, enforcers, and people from the Undercity like Savika and Echo's Firefly friend. Somehow Jace called this meeting and got all these disparate people to attend in a matter of what? Hours? The meeting is to explain the imminent threat facing the city in hopes of uniting everyone to face it, though they already came together for this meeting without knowing about the threat. And no, never mind, keep going. Jace shows off the robot and says that there are more coming along with Ambessa's forces.
Hundreds more are on the way. The Noxian general is leading them.
Though he doesn't tell them what the army's after, and Ambessa was helping to defend the city just a few days ago, so this is a lot for people to accept with so little information. Regardless, it works. Some people do choose to leave the city, but others join together to fight.
There's a lot of story to tell, there's not enough time left to tell it. It's okay. Enter montage mode.
Caitlin finds Vi locked in a jail cell. She opens it and teases Vi.
Sorry to say, you've grown a bit predictable.
Meaning she knew Vi was going to let Jinx free and let her. But Vi is in an extremely vulnerable place, feeling like she's lost everyone. So the playful banter from Caitlin pushes her right over the edge. And yeah, that happens. The two of them get it on, in a jail cell. Now, I hate to rain on the shipping parade. I'm lying. No, I don't. But I have to take a moment and appreciate how much the writers have bungled this relationship. I'm sure it'll win some praise for its diversity and inclusion, but in the few episodes they gave us where these two are a thing, we've had them be on again, off again, domestic abuse, and prison sex. Instead of a deep, meaningful relationship, the writers instead pulled out every lesbian cliche and trope in the book. Well, I guess there is one they haven't used. But all they have to do is kill one of these two off in the final battle, and that would complete the set. So that's something to look forward to, at least. Anyway, Vi and Caitlin are, busy. Mel goes to see her mother. Ambessa is shocked and genuinely relieved to see her daughter, but Mel wastes no time confronting Ambessa.
I know about the Black Rose.
Mel then asks Ambessa to abandon her crusade against Piltover.
Board your boats. Leave our shores.
I will join you.
But Embessa's hatred for mages and the arcane runs too deep. She says mages and magic violates the only principle she cares about.
Their very nature violates the most core of Noxian principles, that every one of us is equal on the battlefield.
But Embessa is partnering with Victor, who at this point is little better than a mage, hoping that he will use magic to deliver her super soldiers so she can dominate the battlefield. And that just seems contradictory. But that is what I've come to expect from this show, so it's not a surprise. Point is, Embessa is not deterred, and she doesn't want Mel's help. Singe is playing around with his equipment, and in the Netherrealm, Sky disappears, and I don't know how to explain whatever this is. But anyway, I guess he's got a body again, an army of robots, and Warwick, and I don't care. And that is the end of this episode, leaving only one more for the big battle and all the wrap-up. And I don't have much to say that I haven't said before. So let's get to the big, dumb, ridiculous ending of this big, dumb, ridiculous show. For the final episode, The Dirt Under Your Nails, they bring back the music video montage thing. The writers thought they would need to hammer home that Jinx is depressed and suicidal, so they give us a melancholy song while Jinx burns down key locations from her past. Silco's office, the last drop, their old hideout. As with some of the other montages, this one is visually striking, and it does carry a bit of resonance, as we see places that we've known so well going up in flames. But I also have a bit of an issue with the song. It is haunting and it fits the imagery, but it also is overwrought, and some of the lyrics just don't match Jinx's character. Lines like this.
I used to have strength, but I ran out of hope.
Jinx has never epitomized hope. Since her emergence in episode 4 of season 1, she has exemplified chaos, death, and destruction. The pivotal scene at the end of season 1 sees her giving up any kind of hope to embrace her madness. And no, I don't count any of her changes in this season. As I've already explained at length, those changes are contrived, forced, and not given enough substance to have any weight. And as with other music videos, this sequence is another way to skip through character beats, so that we buy that Jinx is fully prepared to end her own life. Jinx puts a Hex Tech gem into one of her grenades and sets it off, but just as she begins to blast apart, time runs backwards and Echo's voice calls out to stop her.
Wait!
Talk about timing. This is the moment he pops back into, that he reappeared at this exact time in this exact place to intervene. Jinx tells Echo to go away and sets off the grenade again, and Echo rewinds time again. This happens a few more times until Echo manages to make an appeal to stop her.
No matter what happened in the past, it's never too late to build something new.
Honestly, this doesn't play very well. After building up Jinx's hopeless mindset, there's no reason to think that the one person who could get through to her would be Echo. Remember the last time we saw these two together, they fought, and Jinx set off a grenade that nearly killed them both. And the only thing we have since then is Echo's experience with a very different version of Powder. And for some reason, the writers want us to believe that this version of Jinx has enough in common with that version of Powder, that an appeal from a boy that she may or may not have a secret crush on is enough to change her mental emotional state. Nope, don't buy it. The writers want us, through inference and supposition, to make the connections that they didn't bother to build. And it doesn't work. But by this point, the sun is rising. Embessa is preparing her assault, while Piltover prepares to resist her. Jace is with Mel, Caitlin, and Vi in the underground council chamber. But oddly enough, none of our surviving council members are there. Jace tells the others that they have to hold off the attacking army long enough for him to shut down the Hex Gate.
Buy me as much time as you can so I can shut down the Hex Gates.
So, question. Why hasn't he done that already? Why isn't he working on that right now while the others prepare? I understand that they were using it to evacuate people, but that should be over now, and Jay should be well on his way to shutting it down. There's absolutely no reason to wait on this. But also, I have to ask if shutting down the gate would even affect the evil orb thing. It's an arcane anomaly that lives within a white void space, and what is it Victor said?
A singularity simultaneously self-replicating and self-annihilating.
Yeah, that. Neither the characters nor the audience have enough understanding of this thing for any of this to make sense. Anyway, Jace says that they're supposed to lose the fight, and that everything will be over if Victor makes it to the Hex Gate, to which Caitlin responds,
Then we'd best stop him.
After that, hard cut to black. And then right into the middle of the battle. Yeah, we don't get an epic lead-in, no Lord of the Rings style scene where the armies line up and face each other down, you know, where we get to see the geography and the scale of the battlefield. No moments with each member of the cast as they quietly consider their own mortality. We don't have any time for that kind of nonsense. We cut right into the action. Fighting, firing, explosions. Piltover does have some cool looking hextech cannons. We never saw anyone build those. Are they new or have they been there for a long time? whatever. The fight is pretty chaotic, and not in a good way. Fighting is happening all over, and it's hard to know what is happening where. Mbessa steps up and starts tearing through enforcers with a blade chain weapon. But Caitlin has a new sniper rifle and gets Mbessa in her sights. And that would be great, but there's a problem. Remember how Jinx changed her gun from one that shot projectiles to energy blasts, so that it could be blocked by Rictus's cool rune things? Well, now Caitlin's rifle also shoots energy blasts instead of projectiles, so Mbessa can block it with the cool rune things. And that's convenient. Convenient that Jace changed how the rifle worked just for this fight, and convenient that Mel didn't warn anyone that her mother had Rictus's runes, which she did see her mother putting on during their conversation. And I have to give the writers some props for giving Mbessa literal plot armor here. It is at least amusing. Anyway, next a big brute guy is bringing the ball thing with Victor's body in it towards the Hex Gate. Oh yeah, remember the Hex Gate? Surely Jace has taken care of that by now. Nope. He's only just now starting to shut it down. It's almost like Jace knows he's in a TV show and there are dramatic stakes that have to be served. In one of the guard tower, Loris tries to get his cannon reloaded so he can shoot at Victor's pod, but the enemy bursts in. And what are those things? They look like the Shimmer-powered drones, but that doesn't make sense. Shimmer was destroyed and they aren't making it anymore. Unless Singe started making more, which we didn't see. You know, I keep trying to rationalize things that have no reason, and I keep realizing that I'm doing it just to do it again. It's becoming a vicious cycle. Let's see if I can go through the rest of this video without doing it again. So the army breaks in, and Loris is killed almost immediately. R.I.P. big guy. Caitlin, Maddie, and some of the other enforcers make it down to where Mbessa and her men are. They throw smoke grenades and send some poor sap on what looks like a suicide run. But he doesn't make it, so the enforcer with no name. Seriously, this guy was part of Caitlin's strike team early in the season, and he still doesn't have a name. Anyway, he picks up the bomb and carries it over to Victor's pod, where it seems it isn't a suicide pack, but a sticky bomb. Our enforcer guy sets the bomb and runs, but a stray nail somehow got caught in the mechanism and prevents it from going off. Gee, that's convenient. Then Caitlin and the others are knocked out from behind. And when she comes back to consciousness an unknown amount of time later, she sees that herself and the other enforcers have been caught because the Noxians are suddenly taking prisoners. Caitlin turns around to see who knocked her out, and, dramatic pause, it was Maddie.
Say what?
That's interesting. When did Caitlin's fling betray her? Was it recent? Is it some kind of lover's quarrel because Caitlin hooked up with Vi again? Well, no. Mbessa walks up and says,
I warned you of the hazards of professional entanglement.
Calling back to her line in episode 4 implies that Maddie was working with Mbessa the entire time, which presents a number of issues. Most rest on the fact that Maddie's actions up until now don't provide any setup for it. Back in episode 4, when she and Caitlin were talking in bed, she says this.
You could call it off. We established the council. All you have to do is give the order.
Now, if she were an agent for Mbessa, wouldn't she be guiding Caitlin toward working with her? To downplay Caitlyn's anxieties and manipulate her into being more compliant? It feels like this is a twist that was thought of late in the process, and they crammed it in. Also, I want to point out that there has been a time jump here, where Caitlin was knocked out. Even if that period of time was short, our other characters have been on pause that whole time. Vi was pinned, Jace was powering down the Hex Gate, and time just hasn't moved for them. But here, Caitlin grabs Maddie's rifle and clocks her with it before trying to shoot Mbessa. And the old warlord proves she's too fast. Ouch. Luckily for Caitlin, it's a small dagger in a non-vital spot. But why would Mbessa just wound her and not kill her outright? Why to make Maddie do it, of course. Why would she do that? I don't know. But it doesn't matter, because when Maddie does pull the trigger, the bullet gets deflected off some magical barrier and ricochets right into her skull. What was the point of her character again? The doors of the Hex Gate dramatically open to reveal Mel, who was the one who threw up the shield to protect Caitlin, even though she couldn't see what was happening from inside the building. Too bad she didn't do that earlier, she could have saved a few people. But it seems like Mel also knows she's in a TV show, and there are dramatic stakes that have to happen. Mel comes forward to make one last appeal to avoid more bloodshed, but Mbessa calls Mel a fox.
Still a fox.
Calling back to an earlier conversation about foxes and wolves.
A wolf has no mercy.
Then she calls on her soldiers. So I guess at this point, Mbessa's talk about putting family first and doing everything she's done to protect Mel goes right out the window.
I did what you could not. For you. For the family. Soldier!
Because Mbessa knows that she's on a TV show and there are stakes that have to happen. But the standoff doesn't last long, because punk music starts playing, colored smoke bombs go off, and Jinx appears on a big dirigible craft of some sort, with Echo and some of his Firelight buddies, who whiz around on their hoverboard thingies. Oh, and a bunch of people from Zahn have also shown up, including Savika. Sure, she walked away and refused to fight, but something happened, off-screen, to change her mind. Sure, why not? In the chaos, our captured forces get up and get back into the fight. And just as we thought, Vi is still in the guard tower surrounded by foes, almost as if time hasn't passed at all for her. Jinx and Echo lend a hand while a random enforcer tries to get the cannon working again, which he does, and shoots Victor's pod, which is empty. Dun dun dun! So apparently the whole frontal assault thing was a feint. Down by the hex gate, Victor's new body emerges to cut through the door and enters the chamber where Jace is still working. And yeah, he hasn't finished yet. But let's back up a moment. Victor claimed he needed Mbessa's help to get to the hex gate, because he couldn't do it alone.
I do not have the strength to overcome the defense he will raise against me.
But now we see the whole assault was a feint, so Victor managed to bypass all of it and waltzed right into the tower. So this whole big battle is contrived BS, because the writers really wanted a big battle at the end of the show, but couldn't think of a legitimate way to make it happen. I mean, look at Victor's new body. How is he supposed to be too weak to do this on his own? Anyway, things keep going from bad to worse, because outside, Warwick and an army of robot people show up. They start grabbing people, seemingly to convert them too. And this is a bit of a problem for me. Remember that line of Victor's I asked you to remember from the last episode?
I will evolve all those willing.
Yeah, that line. That would imply that Victor wouldn't forcibly evolve people against their will. So either something changed or he was lying, because the robots aren't even offering people a convert or die choice here. They're just converting them. While this happens, Mel tries again to talk her mother down. And again, it doesn't work. At least not before Caitlin interrupts.
Shut up and fight!
Because Caitlin knows that she's on a TV show and stakes have to happen. And Caitlin and Mbessa fight. Meanwhile, robots swarm over the Hexgate tower, and Warwick appears in front of Vi. Jinx distracts the beast by shooting it, and succeeds at getting his attention. Echo swoops down to help Vi, and the two manage to help Jinx by crashing the dirigible into the Hexgate. Yeah, I'm not so sure about that tactic, but hey, it looks cool. The fight between Mbessa, Mel, and Caitlin is still going, while Victor gets his evil villain monologue, where he openly says choice is false.
Choice is false.
So yeah, apparently he was BSing everyone the whole time. This might have been an interesting idea if they weren't also trying to make Victor a sympathetic character with a noble if misguided goal. Sorry writers, if you're aiming to make Victor a Thanos-style villain, you fell pretty wide of the mark. Anyway, we see that Jace's idea of shutting down the Hexgate was just to pop out every power cell, just about halfway, conveniently still resting in the receptacles, so that Victor can use his magic to just pop them all in again. Boy, that's convenient. If Jace had pulled them all the way out, Victor would have had a much harder time reactivating the Hexgate. Outside, the ladies' fight continues, and Caitlin trades one of her eyes for getting a hold of Mbessa's runestones. Now defenses against magic, Mel activates her necklace, and Mbessa is swallowed by the Black Rose Void. And the Black Rose person does something to her. Then Mel breaks into the void, and though the Black Rose lady tries to restrain her, Mel proves too strong and blasts the void away, which frees both her and Mbessa. But whatever the Black Rose Lady did took its toll, because Mbessa has just enough strength to tell Mel she really is a wolf.
You are the wolf.
And then dies. Right. I really don't understand how any of that worked. Why would Mel let the Black Rose take her mom, then intervene to stop them, but not before they had killed her? And I don't know what exactly killed Mbessa or what that means for Mel going forward. But that's the end of that, I guess. With Mbessa gone, her troops stand down, and this part of the battle is over. But we do still have a couple of things to take care of. Vi and the others awaken in the crashed dirigible inside the Hexgate. We see Vi and Jinx and Warwick. The girls call out hoping Vander's still in there somewhere, but it doesn't seem so, as the new Shimmer-enhanced creature attacks. Down below, Victor and Jay start floating, and the Hexgate activates, transporting them upward. That causes gravity to go wonky in the whole tower, including where Vi, Jinx, and Warwick are fighting. This whole sequence is beautiful to watch. I can't fault Fortiche for their animation. The stuff they're able to pull off visually remains incredibly high. Unfortunately, there's nothing else here but spectacle. Jace and Victor arrive at the roof of the Hexgate, and an all too familiar scene meets them. The foundation of the catastrophe Jace witnessed in the other dimension. Victor does something to activate the evil orb thing, and it sends out glowing tendrils which connect everyone down below, including Vi and Jinx. But not Echo, who wakes up to see all of this. On the roof, Victor brings Jace into the nether space, where everyone is being connected, and Jace tells Victor he's trying to fix things that aren't broken, that there's beauty in imperfections.
You've always wanted to cure what you thought were weaknesses. There is beauty in imperfections.
It's unclear if this gets to Victor, because they're interrupted by Echo, who flies in using his time rewinder, as he avoids all the dangers until he's caught anyway. And he risks going back more than 4 seconds, long enough to get free, and throws the time device at Victor, which then explodes. upending things on the roof. Victor's mask is damaged, which causes him to let go of Jace, and Jace makes one final plea to his friend.
All I want is my partner back.
Victor is left to wonder why Jace remains defiant, and Jace says it's because he promised. Jace hugs Victor, and we see that the wizard who helped Jace more than once was in fact Victor the whole time. The elder, alternate Victor, says that in every timeline, in every dimension, Jace is the only one who is able to teach him to give up on his schemes.
There is no prize to perfection. Only you can show me this.
Of course, as we see this, so does Victor, and the revelation is a bit too much for him. He tells Jace to leave, but Jace insists that they end things together.
We finish this together.
Jace gives Victor the rune gem that Wizard Victor gave him, and that does something. I don't really know what, but all the robot people release the spirits of the people that were trapped in them, I guess, and they all get sucked into the anomaly along with Jace and Victor. And they're all gone. Gone where? Are they alive? Are they dead? We don't know. The show doesn't say, but the threat of the apocalypse is gone. Everyone who is still human is saved. Yay! But up in the tower, V, Jinx, and Warwick are not safe yet. Yeah, so all the robot things got their souls or whatever sucked out, but whatever is in Warwick is still there. So he wakes up and attacks Vi, but Jinx zaps in just in time to save her. Oh yeah, remember? Jinx can teleport over short distances. Gee, it seems like that would have come in handy when she was trying to save a certain someone else. Anyway, Vi is holding onto Jinx and Warwick's holding onto her, and the platform is giving way. Looks pretty bad, but Jinx pulls up and manages to break Vi's gauntlet. So Jinx and Warwick fall in slow motion, allowing Jinx to use her grenade to blow them both up. Never mind, the big brute was shrugging off rockets earlier. This apparently got him. And Jinx gets to go out in a dramatic act of self-sacrifice, because even Jinx knew that she was on a TV show, and there are dramatic stakes that have to happen. Later, at a memorial service, bowls with the names of those who have died are lit on fire and blow away in the wind, while Caitlin has a voiceover about how the War of Piltover will be remembered.
You may read about the war in Piltover.
It wasn't really a war. It was like one battle. But the point here isn't accuracy. It's posterity. We see everyone has learned their lesson. Piltover and Zon are now united in peace, as we see a newly formed council has representatives of both cities. The Noxians head home, and we finally see an eye patch sporting Caitlin and Vi at home together, apparently committing to an actual relationship. And with that, Arcane ends.
Ha! Now that wasn't so bad, was it? No, of course not.
I know some people will be very content with Arcane Season 2. It gave them everything they could want. Bigger action sequences, more backstories, more sister-on-sister drama, more Caitlin and Vi drama, more beautiful animation. And yes, it did have all those things, but it was the way it was delivered. Forced, contrived, and too condensed. The focus of blowing through as much plot as possible weakened not only the story, but the characters as well. None of it felt organic. It wasn't allowed to grow and build naturally, or for the stakes to grow out of relatable characters who we could connect to and understand. So by the end, I just felt pummeled by the sheer force of all the show was trying to throw at me. No time to follow it, process it, or even understand it.
But this, I still don't fully understand.
As a result, I can't even conjure the smallest amount of emotion for it. The sadness I feel isn't over anything that happened, it's over the potential I saw in the series after the first season. The confidence I had in the writers to produce a good character-driven story. I am disappointed that they decided to just be done with Arcane so they could move on to other projects, neglecting the promise of what could have been for what they wanted instead. But here at last, we are done. If you've watched all these videos, I thank you. I am sorry it's taking me so long to get them all out, but I appreciate everyone who stuck through it. As always, remember, all of this is just one rebel's opinion. Whether you disagree or agree, please drop some thoughts in the comments below, subscribe to the channel, and keep an eye out for future updates right here on Rebel Normal.